Blue Dragon Emperor, Lord of Thunder. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Falling Asleep Again. The blue dragon wings fluttered and slowed down. Long N landed in front of Kirelia's dragon nest, releasing the dragon's might that meant to ask the other party to come out to see him. The elegant black-haired female priest and the handsome blonde female swordsman walked out together. "Ladies," Long N said, "I have good news for you." "What good news can it be? You and that magic scale had a cub?" Vidalpin folded his arms and pouted. Long N's head was full of black lines. Controlling the urge to slap the iron-headed golden dragon into the ground and then dig it out, Long N said, "I have arranged the affairs of the territory and prepared to sleep for a while. I have a feeling that this sleep will be longer than any previous one. But your employment contract is only valid for 1 year, and it will end at the end of the fire month this year, which is less than 4 months from now. Therefore, in order to prevent my sleep from delaying your journey after the end of the contract, I come here to terminate the contractual employment relationship with you two in advance. Of course, the excess employment fees do not need to be refunded. You can rest assured. End the employment relationship in advance." Vidalpin hesitated for a while and said, "No, according to the employment period of the contract, we can only charge you 7,036 gold coins and 7 silver coins. Wait, I'll give you the change." Long N looked at Vidalpin speechlessly as he took out the gold coins one by one with distressed eyes, and felt amused in his heart. No need to count. In addition to the gold coins due in the contract, the remaining gold coins are gifts between friends, which will be used to finance the expenses of your subsequent travel. Gifts from friends will not violate the principles of your golden dragons, right? Although they had only been together for less than a year, when his territory was just starting out, this iron-headed golden dragon Lali did help him a lot. Long N indeed regarded them all as friends. Although his tone was frivolous, his words were sincere. "Really?" Vidalpin's eyes lit up, and he quickly stuffed the gold coins he had taken out back into the storage ring. "Don't go back on your word." Long N rolled his eyes. "When have I ever broken my promise?" Turning his head to look at Kirelia, Long N said, "In addition to those gold coins, I have an extra gift for you, as a thank you for saving me before risking your life to be killed by the incarnation of the demon." Long N took out a silver ring inlaid with large diamonds and dotted with sapphires. The exquisite workmanship and configuration made this ring look like a fine work of art. In fact, this ring was a family heirloom collected by an unlucky noble whose property was confiscated by Long N. It was a magical equipment that could release high-level spells, but the strongest magic in it only had 7 rings, which was not very useful to Long N. It happened that the silver dragon liked to make exquisite works of art, so Long N simply gave this magic equipment to Kirelia to repay her for saving him and severely injuring her dragon wings with the disintegration technique. Kirelia's eyes lit up, and she loved this beautifully crafted ornament very much. Long N's reason for giving her the gift was also very reasonable, so she took it without hesitation. "Then I wish you a pleasant journey and a safe journey." Long N smiled. "The journey is like sailing with the wind. Your blessing is really strange, but thank you." Vidalpin said carelessly, "I wish you all the best here too." Kirelia blessed. The elegant silver dragon still knows how to speak. Long N nodded in greeting, flapped his wings, and flew back to his dragon nest. He handed over the affairs of the territory to Flores and Glengo respectively, and they were in charge of the City Lord Hall. There were restrictions on the contract, and Long N was very confident in them. The territory development plan had also been written into a document by Long N and handed over to Flores. Although this chaotic good spell scales jumping thoughts made her brain seem bad, as a high-level spellcaster, her IQ was definitely no problem, and she was fully capable of executing Long N's preset plan. The situation in the Principality of Berlin has also stabilized. There will be no more unrest for at least the next 10 years. The safety of the territory is also taken care of by the white dragon Galaxus. Although adult white dragons are slightly weaker than other real dragons, they are enough to deal with ordinary invaders. if they really encounter an enemy that is difficult to contend with, Galangsus, who is smarter and more clever than other white dragons, will also know to come back for help. With an inexplicable sense of crisis and a desire to become stronger, Long N closed the dragon's nest and climbed up the high pile of gold coins. With the experience of the last time, Long N put all the rare gems into the storage ring to prevent them from being transformed and absorbed by the scales given by the platinum dragon god. But after thinking about it, Long N still reluctantly took out half of the gems. The gems in this world contain elemental energy. Without this energy, Long N's growth rate will inevitably slow down a lot, and how can he grow as fast as last time? In order to improve his strength, Long N can only reluctantly give up, spend money to accelerate his growth, and become a noble Krypton gold player. A gemstone can cost hundreds or thousands of gold coins, while an expensive one can easily cost thousands of gold coins. It is not wrong to say that Long N is spending money, consuming gemstones to accelerate growth. This cheat given by Bahamut really makes dragons love and hate it. After complaining with resentment, Long N squeezed the gold coins away and then used his dragon tail to sweep the gold coins around him and gather them around him, half burying himself in the pile of gold coins. The cold gold coins pressed against his scales, giving Long N a strong sense of solidity. Long N, who had emptied his mind, soon took a long breath and fell into a deep sleep. The silver white scales given by the platinum dragon god flashed with colorful light as Long N breathed. Under the light, the gemstone slowly dissolved into elemental energy and dispersed in the dragon's nest, gradually turning the surrounding area into a place where elements are enriched, attracting free element from the outside world to gather at the location of the dragon's nest. Under a dragon scale of Long N, a jade-like light blue crystal gradually decomposed into a strange true dragon energy under the effect of the colorful glimmer, and slowly merged into Long N's body. After staying in Long N's territory for a few more days, and packing up the items in the dragon's nest, Corellia and Videlpin finally set off. Looking at the dragon's nest, where elemental energy had begun to gather, Long N had obviously fallen asleep, and the two women did not disturb him again. According to their original travel plan, they flew directly to the south. Lydia, show me the gift Long N gave you. Videlpin, whose dragon wings were swimming in the air like waves, approached the gracefully flying silver dragon and said, although the gold dragon is not as persistent and fond of artworks as the silver dragon, the gold dragon prefers to collect various magic equipment. This magic ring that can release high-level spells naturally makes Videlpin very envious, not to mention that the exquisite appearance and shining gems add a lot of color to it. After receiving the gift, Corellia was busy packing up and leaving. Before she had studied the ring carefully, she handed it to her friend. Videlpin carefully took the ring and looked at it carefully, drooling. Looking at it from a different angle, Videlpin suddenly found a line of small words on the inner circle of the ring. She read it while reading, dedicated to my love, the moonlight is not as bright as you. Wow. Videlpin cheered excitedly, as if she had discovered a secret, which made Corellia panic. No wonder Long N only gave you gifts and not me. Humph. So you guys. Seeing that her friend was getting more and more outrageous, Corellia was embarrassed and annoyed, and threw a big water ball to interrupt Videlpin's nonsense, and cast a spell to snatch the ring. The two close friends cast low-level spells on each other in the air, and the surging elemental fluctuations frightened the flying creatures around and fled. After playing for a while, the ring finally fell into Corellia's hands again. Seeing that her friend did not make fun of her again, Corellia carefully observed the diamond ring. Dedicated to my lover, the moonlight is not even a fraction of yours. Corellia was so embarrassed that her blood rushed to her head. The scales on her face tightened, and the bright silver wrinkles on her neck slightly stretched out like a silver ribbon, making her look more delicate and beautiful. He probably didn't notice this line of text, Corellia thought to herself. Then, her mental power went deep into the ring and deconstructed the spell model in the ring, so that it could be used more conveniently. The 7th ring spell Amber Seal can be used twice every 7 days, and the 6th ring spell Healing can be used 3 times every 7 days. The 5th ring spell Ultra Long Teleportation can be used 5 times every 7 days. Corellia's heart beat, and she thought wildly, does he want me to keep in touch with him more often? Long'n's nose was itchy in his sleep, and he turned over after sneezing, and the gold coins covering his body fell down one after another. Long'en instinctively scratched his belly with his paws, and continued to snore, before falling into a deep sleep. Chapter 102 The Hill Giants Movement. The Principality of Heaton protested to Grand Duke Boran, and asked us to raise the price of cotton and linen textiles. Earl Johnson, who was much more energetic than 3 years ago, sat at a long table, and reported the documents in his hand. His compact and passionate life seemed to make him much younger. At the head of the long table, Flawless, who was deceived by Long'en to sign a contract to manage the territory, was boringly twisting her hair, which had recently been dyed 4 colors, with her fingers. Hearing Johnson's speech, Flawless said, "Then raise the price of cotton cloth. It's the same thing. It's 10% lower than the price of their locally produced cotton cloth. Those small workshops will not be able to bear it, and will go bankrupt." With the advantages of fast production speed, large production volume and high quality, Black Rock City has now monopolized the cloth, paper and other industries in neighboring countries. Those traditional workshops are vulnerable to the industrial assembly line. The Principality of Leamington, which was originally dumped by Black Rock City, has now completely become a raw material production base for Black Rock City. After the civil war in Boran, Grand Duke Leamington originally wanted his country's merchants to occupy all the markets in the Principality of Boran, but he didn't expect that his country would be dumped by the ridiculously low-priced goods from Blackstone Town. Profit-seeking merchants shipped cheap goods back to Leamington, forcing the cloth, paper, and clothing produced by handicraft workshops to reduce their prices, but the market share was still squeezed and shrunk, and the small handicraft workshops in the Principality of Leamington eventually had to declare bankruptcy. These merchants bought cotton at a premium and shipped it to Blackstone City, causing the nobles and self-employed farmers who controlled a large amount of land to change their land to cotton. The cotton planted flowed to the Blackstone City steam textile factory in the west of the Principality of Boran, and then turned into cloth or clothing and flowed to surrounding countries. In this process, the wealth of the nobles and self-employed farmers in the Principality of Leamington continued to increase, and the civilians were able to buy goods at lower prices. Everything seemed to be moving in a good direction. The nobles had more gold coins to hold banquets to celebrate the cotton that was growing better and better in the fields, and the rich fools in Black Rock City who kept buying and never bargained down. It was just that the prices of grain, vegetables, and livestock seemed to be getting higher and higher recently, but the nobles didn't care. They made much more money than the increase in grain prices. After completely conquering the market of the Principality of Leamington, Black Rock City began to turn its attention to the Principality of Heaton to the south of the Principality of Boran and the Kingdom of Facity to the north. The Principality of Heaton, whose domestic handicraft manufacturing industry collapsed rapidly in the dumping, had protested to Grand Duke Boran, but the larger Kingdom of Facity had enough population to digest these goods without excessively affecting the prices of local handicraft workshops, and it was obvious that it could still hold out for a long time in the commercial offensive of Black Rock City. The nobles of the Principality of Boran originally wanted to make a profit by growing cotton, but Grand Duke of Boran, Vinlgog, who had been warned by long in advance, strictly prohibited all nobles' land from being used to grow cotton, and could only be used to produce food. This ban initially caused dissatisfaction among the nobles of the fiefdom, but in front of the Grand Duke, who was crowned in the war, they did not have enough confidence to resist his orders. Later, the price of grain in the Principality of Leamington rose, allowing them to make profits by growing grain, so they no longer asked the Grand Duke to revoke the decree banning cotton planting in the Noble Council from time to time. Today, Blackstone City has become the most prosperous city in the Principality of Barlan, by relying on industrialized production. Flat roads for caravans have been built, and countless people can flock to Blackstone City more conveniently. In just 3 years, the number of civilians and permanent floating population settled in Blackstone City has reached 600,000, and the urban area has been expanded several times. Thanks to the prestige and tough enforcement measures of the Lord's Hall, the city's expansion and demolition and reconstruction are well planned. The city does not appear crowded or blocked, but the roads are wide and clean, and the houses are neat and orderly. In today's Blackstone City, as long as you work hard, you can earn a high salary. You only need to go to the Lord's Hall again, choose a house in the newly built urban area, to pay a down payment, and then pay the mortgage every month, and you can become a glorious Blackstone citizen. Now Blackstone City has become the real land of hope that everyone in the Principality of Boron knows and yearns for. After Earl Johnson sat down, the big men in the eyes of the citizens spoke one by one, but they all talked about issues related to business or city management. Flores had listened to these things over and over again for 3 years in this position, and now she was so bored that she wanted to yawn. After the people at the long table reported a circle and no one continued, Glengo suddenly said, "Hill giants heading south were found in the north of the Storm Mountains. Just wipe them out like before." Flores yawned. But Glengo shook his head. "It's different from the hill giants found in the past few years. This batch of hill giants heading south has as many as 800. 800? Flores woke up immediately, and the others frowned. In the past 3 years, Blackstone City has discovered hill giants heading south 5 times, ranging from dozens to more than 100, and each time the family army directly wiped out these hill giants. But this time there are a full 800 hill giants, which seems extremely unusual. What's wrong with these hill giants? Why do they keep running south?" Flores said, "Grengo, you should contact Scar and the leaders of the clan army. If necessary, you can bring the newly made weapons and test their power." "Yes, Agent," Glengo said respectfully. After the quarterly regular meeting, Flores walked into the waiting carriage with her tall legs and drove towards Dragon Nest Town at the foot of Storm Mountain. This was the name Flores gave to the clan town for the convenience of management. Passing over the large tracts of reclaimed farmland, it was close to the harvest month, and the golden wheat waves were surging in the farmland. But Flores' mind had long drifted elsewhere, wondering whether she should change her clothes or add a few more colors to her hair. The carriage drove into Dragon Nest Town and passed through the wide streets near Longe and Dragon Nest. Flores looked at the still closed Dragon Nest with resentment. "You left me here busy while you went to sleep, damn it." Just when Flores was about to look away, the elemental energy gathered near the dragon's nest suddenly fluctuated violently and quickly rushed towards the dragon's nest. A terrifying and powerful dragon might swept across the dragon's nest town, as if announcing the awakening of a certain existence. 2 real dragons, one red and one white, flew from a distance and lowered their heads in front of the dragon's nest. A long roar of stretching came from the dragon's nest, followed by the sound of rubble falling after the collision of hard objects and rocks, and then, boom, the dragon's nest collapsed. Flores, the 2 real dragons, one red and one white, and the clan members who were attracted by the sight. "I'm really too busy. The author will update normally when I have time. Thank you for reading." Chapter 103 Super Large Dragon. Galangsus and Egadius looked at each other, still hesitating whether to go forward to help dig out Longen. Suddenly, the broken rocks shook, and 2 huge blue dragon wings squeezed out from the boulders. The dragon wings were waving with power, generating a huge lifting force, driving the huge blue figure out of the collapsed mountain. The huge body covered with beautiful sapphire-like scales swayed, shaking off the dust, and the huge wings spread out to stir up the hurricane, blowing the fine dust off the scales. Galangsus squinted in the strong wind pressure and looked up at the huge creature casting a shadow. The wingspan is 20 meters. Galangsus subconsciously spread his wings to compare with it and found that his body was obviously much smaller. Originally, after being beaten by Longen, Galangsus could still comfort himself that, although he could not beat Longen, he was bigger than Longen. Body size is one of the important indicators to measure the handsomeness of a real dragon. For ordinary real dragons, a large body size is roughly equivalent to strong strength, and strong strength symbolizes a large amount of treasure. Originally much larger than Longen, Galangsus always thought that he was much more handsome than Longen, but now, how can he grow so fast? Longen shook his head and woke up from the dizziness of the rock hitting his head. Cough. Glancing at the subordinates and family members who were watching, Longen coughed lightly to cover up his embarrassment and said, "Disperse. Don't go near the dangerous area of mountain collapse." Egadius and Galangsus returned to their nests first. Fululis, notify Blueear, and organize the dog-headed people to dig out all the treasures stored in the dragon's nest, and then have people prepare some food. "As you command, Great Master." Egadius responded more respectfully. Yes, sir. Galangsis replied with a depressed look. The two dragons left together, and the onlookers dispersed at Long N's command. Long N then used the mirror image technique to summon an illusion that looked exactly like himself, and looked at it carefully. It's 19 meters long, with a wingspan of 20 meters. The lines of the muscles are more obvious, and it looks a little more solid and powerful than the previous slender body. The tail of a real dragon is slender compared to the body, so it doesn't make the real dragon look like a square block. With its wings folded, the real dragon has strong muscles and a coordinated head, neck and limbs. From the perspective of body structure, it is more like a vigorous large cat, rather than a reptile like a lizard imagined by some creatures who have never seen a real dragon. The scales are more three-dimensional and thick, and more like gems than before. The shape and color of the scales are also a major criterion for measuring the appearance of a real dragon. The closer the color of a real dragon's scales is to precious metals or shiny gems, the more popular it will undoubtedly be with real dragons of the opposite sex. Which real dragon can refuse a piece of gold/platinum/gem that looks like a real dragon and can mate? Manipulating the illusion to raise his neck, Long N looked at himself carefully. The scales on the visor have become much thicker, and the shape has changed a bit. The texture of the dragon horn is more like obsidian than before. The change in the visor made Long N look more majestic and profound. The black jade eyes under the brow seemed to be examining everything in the world. Long N was more satisfied with his current appearance. From the perspective of the real dragon's aesthetics, he simply couldn't find any faults in himself. After waking up, he broke through 18 meters and grew to the level of a super large dragon. I don't know how long it took to sleep this time. The last time I slept, it only took a few months. The gems in the dragon's nest were decomposed into elemental energy and their volume shrunk by more than half. The gems placed in the dragon's nest before sleeping this time are probably all decomposed. Gem. Long N suddenly remembered that he seemed to have forgotten to put a gem in the storage ring. The scales hiding the jade dragon nest stone stretched open, but there was nothing inside. It was absorbed together. No wonder his appearance changed during his sleep growth. According to his original appearance, his body should be more slender and elegant like a silver dragon. But it seems that, because he absorbed the ancient dragon's breath in the jade dragon's nest stone, his body gradually began to become more like the strong and powerful red dragon. A powerful real dragon will always cause the surrounding environment or creatures to change. Just like when Long N was sleeping, the goblins living around him mutated into flame and frost goblins, and the kobolds awakened into dragon vein kobolds. The breath released by powerful ancient dragons, and ancient dragons may also cause the still weak real dragons that are still in the growth stage to change. Long N's situation is such a case. After figuring out the cause and effect of the subtle change in his appearance, Long N withdrew his thoughts. After concentrating his attention, Long N suddenly found that there were light spots of magic aura gathered around him. What is this? Long N touched one of the light spots, and suddenly Kirelia's voice rang in his mind. Some time ago, Pan and I traveled to this desert town called Lucia. It's a very interesting place. The humans here dig holes in a tree, called the pot tree, and get water from the heart of the pot tree. Long N was full of questions. What is this? He touched a few more light spots casually, all of which were travel diaries shared by Kirelia. Long N, who was confused, simply received all the spell auras of the communication spell and quickly listened to the messages in them. After processing all the messages in his mind, Long N finally roughly understood what happened. So she is sharing her travel experiences with her friends? And she is expecting my reply? Maybe I should tell them that I have ended my sleep? Long N, who had never thought that Kirelia had a misunderstanding because of the magic equipment he sent, also misunderstood the hundreds of messages from Kirelia in 3 years. After casually replying a message to inform the other party that he had awakened, Long N flew directly to Flawless's residence. A moment later, Long N was biting into a whole cow cooked with various cooking methods, while listening to Flawless reporting to him the development and changes of the territory and the current problems during the 3 years of his sleep. Long N ignored the problems of territory management and the protests of neighboring countries dumping land. After 3 years of compulsory education and adult education, it is difficult to find capable managers in the territory, but there are many people who can accurately execute Long N's orders. If there is a problem with management, Long N can just hang a group of them and replace them with new ones. As for the commercial sanctions from neighboring countries, all commercial sanctions are meaningless in the face of crushing productivity. In order to earn gold coins, merchants from neighboring countries will naturally take the initiative to help them bypass various sanctions. However, the news about the hill giants aroused Long N's interest. He decided to go to the north in person to find out what the purpose of these hill giants is. Chapter 104 Bombardment. The clan armies in the territory were mobilized on a large scale. This made the gnolls, tigers and other clans eager to fight, who could only rely on military physical training to vent their violent desires after the end of the Bolan Civil War 3 years ago, extremely excited. Now they are all armed with excellent standard fine steel armor and fine steel weapons, and they are also enchanted with simplified versions of bull strength, cat grace, arrow deflection and other spells. These simplified spell enchantments are not as powerful as second ring spells, but they are much stronger than first ring spells. In order to arm these magical equipment that can arm thousands of people, the Lord's Hall of Blackstone City has invested a lot of gold coins. These natural warriors are looking forward to using a war to test the power they can exert when armed with these equipment. Under Long N's gaze, the clan army phalanxes raised their heads and walked in front of him in an orderly manner, showing their best posture to their lords. Long N looked at the clans and nodded slightly with satisfaction. Although the steps could not be completely uniform, such organization and discipline could already be called an elite division. The spotted cat Mandalidus followed the scout team with her head held high, but her eyes kept looking in Long's direction. The lord is bigger than before. Meow. He's nodding at me. Dilidus was so excited that her blood was boiling. The short hair on her face covered her red face, but her ears kept shaking, which betrayed her mood. Long's eyes withdrew from a tall spotted cat man scout who revealed both wildness and cuteness, and looked at the Tauren leader Sorta beside him. As Long grew up, the dragon vein Tauren who had a blood relationship with Long also grew a lot. Sorta's height has exceeded 4 meters, reaching nearly 5 meters, which is twice the size of an ordinary Tauren. The strength of the other dragon vein Tauren has also increased, reaching more than 3 meters or even 4 meters. Long even doubted that when he grew to the level of the ancient dragon, these Tauren would grow bigger than the legendary giants. Great master, those newly made weapons are ready. Sorta's dull voice sounded. Long N nodded and signaled Sorta to continue. After Sorta made a gesture, huge black heavy artillery was pushed forward by the Minotaurs and passed in front of Long N. This was one of the tasks that Long N gave to Flawless and Tangchu before he fell asleep. Cannons have already appeared on the continent of Runia. Although they are not widely used, the dwarves who are proficient in forging naturally have some understanding of them. The research and development of cannons is not difficult, and Tangchu easily completed the task of casting cannons. The shells fired by these heavy cannons weigh as much as 16 kilograms. According to Long N's previous life, they were 36-pound cannons. The heavy shells were enough to cause a devastating blow to the army, composed of most low and middle level extraordinary people under the huge dynamic potential energy. But the disadvantage of this weapon is also very obvious, that is, it is too heavy and can only be dragged by a large number of livestock on wide and flat roads. It is also difficult to enter complex terrain. According to Tangchu, even in Runia, only a small number of these heavy artillery were cast and placed on the city walls as a firepower supplement for spellcasters, to cover the intervals of spells. After all, the hit rate of these artillery is very touching, and the lethality depends entirely on the experience and feel of the gunner. But under Long N's order, a group of clansmen had been arranged to learn mathematics, and they have been constantly experimenting in the past 3 years to improve and perfect the calibration calculation of artillery shells. 5 days later, the clan army stopped at Scar's order. Scar, wearing a well-made steel armor, came to Long N and knelt on one knee. Master, the scouts sent a message that a hill giant was found 10 kilometers ahead and the enemy is moving along the expected route. Very good. Long N nodded and said, continue to do what you should do. Yes. After Scar gave the order, the Dragon Vein Minotaur carrying the heavy artillery parts unloaded the parts from their bodies, and a group of Dragon Vein Dogheads quickly worked together to assemble 40 heavy artillery. Scar glanced at the scout's report and ordered the Dragon Vein Kobolds who were manning the artillery to adjust the elevation angle and reload. The enemy has entered the range. 7 degrees and 12 minutes east of due north. 4 kilometers away. Wind direction, southwest wind, force 3. Listening to the shouts of the herald, Long N watched the rows of dark and silent heavy artillery slightly adjust and move. The deep muzzle seemed like the gaze of the god of death. Let me see how much power the artillery can still exert in this world. Boom. A round of volleys exploded like thunder. The more than 800 hill giants who were marching suddenly heard a thunder in the distance ahead. Then, one by one, the pitch black iron balls flew over with a sharp whistle. More than half of the iron balls fell outside their team, and the other half hit their team. An extremely fast iron ball hit the calf of a hill giant with a sharp whistle that broke through the air, and its leg bone was torn apart in an instant. The stunned hill giant lost his balance and fell to the side, hitting the ground heavily. He felt the severe pain and started to scream. Several hill giants hit in the head by the iron ball fell straight down, and blood spurted out of their empty necks more than 1 meter high. The hill giants hit in the chest and abdomen wailed in pain. The huge iron ball penetrated their tough skin and bones, but sank into their internal organs and lost kinetic energy. It failed to penetrate their spines and remained in the bodies of these poor hill giants. The shaman leading this group of hill giants widened his eyes, suddenly stood up from the frightened wolf, and looked in the direction of the thunder. It clearly did not feel a trace of magic fluctuations or spell auras. What on earth attacked them from such a long distance? Question mark? The hill giant shaman waved his scepter, making the skin of the hill giants tougher and condensing a thick stone skin on their bodies. Under its command, the hill giants quickly gathered together for defense, but they had no idea how to fight back. Reload and adjust. Prepare for the second round. Boom. Another thunderous sound. Dozens of iron balls fell into the hill giants again. The solid stone skin has enhanced the hill giant's protection ability, but it is still vulnerable to these whistling iron balls. At most, these iron balls cannot kill the hill giants instantly, and they will scream and struggle in pain for a while. Faced with these iron balls brought by thunder, the hill giants began to panic, but under the shaman's order, they could only stay where they were. The casualties caused by the 2 rounds of artillery fire were not large, and only more than 30 hill giants were actually killed. But the attack of this invisible enemy is really frightening and chilling. Reload. Prepare for the third round. Boom. The shells took away the lives of several hill giants again, leaving more than a dozen hill giants screaming in pain as they fell to the ground and wailed. The hill giants finally couldn't bear this inexplicable fear and pressure, and ran towards the direction of the thunder amid the shaman's angry roar. Reload and adjust. Prepare for the fourth round. Boom. After this round of bombardment, Long N said, "Stop bombarding and prepare to meet the enemy." The tall figure of the hill giant soon appeared in Long N's eyes. After a quick glance, Long N said, "Attack with all your forces and crush them." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 105 Lightning at the Fingertips. This group of hill giants is stronger than any of the previous groups of hill giants that went south. Not only are their numbers much greater than before, but their bodies are generally about 3.5 meters tall, and there are even quite a few 4-meter hill giants among them. Adult hill giants can grow to 3 meters, and hill giants of 3.5 to 4 meters in height generally have a higher status in the tribe than the former. Among Long N's clan army, only about 100 Dragon Vein Minotaurs are comparable to these hill giants in size. Although the number of Dragon Vein Minotaurs is small, one side is wrapped in animal skins and the other side is fully armed, so the Minotaurs can still suppress these powerful but stupid hill giants. The relatively short bear men, tiger men, wolf men and other clans cooperate with each other, and with the Dragon Vein dog-headed men's long-range breath and innate spells, they can also kill the hill giants. In order to prevent the hill giant shaman from releasing high-level group buff spells, Long N personally took action and interrupted the spell cast by the hill giant shaman, who was covered in a robe made of animal skins, covered with bone ornaments, and holding a strange scepter. This hill giant shaman, like Grengo, is also a high-level spellcaster of level 7, but Long N is no longer the less than 10 meters away he was at the beginning. The hill giant shaman used spells to escape from the original place in a panic, but Long N followed the static electricity mark he had laid in advance and struck it with a thunderbolt, directly hitting the triggered protective magic item prepared on it. The hill giant shaman was shocked and frightened by the sudden attack of the blue real dragon, and subconsciously released protective spells such as mana shield and elemental resistance on himself. The hill giant shaman, who stared at the real dragon in the air and did not dare to relax for a moment, suddenly saw an iron ball appear in the hand of the real dragon. This iron ball is much smaller than the iron ball that attacked them before, but the texture seems to be the same. Is this the weapon that attacked them before? The hill giant shaman had a sinister look in his eyes, and he began to prepare to release his strongest spell directly under several layers of protection. The hill giant shaman, who had seen this kind of attack, had already estimated the power of this weapon. The previous large iron balls could never penetrate the protective spell he was casting, not to mention this smaller iron ball. In his view, this attack was no different from throwing stones, except that the stones were replaced with iron balls. How much more powerful could it be? Just as he was concentrating on chanting the twisted and difficult syllables, taking out strange spell materials one by one, and the magic aura around him quickly became stronger, he suddenly saw that the blue real dragon threw the small iron ball, then stretched out a finger, and the electric snakes on his body gathered, flashing violent lightning at his fingertips. The hill giant shaman, who was wary of the blue dragon's electric light blinding him, had already cast a spell to resist blinding in advance, and was not affected by the electric light. It focused on Long N's movements and the iron ball in his hand, but after a flash of lightning, it began to wonder, where is that iron ball? Before the self-talk in his mind was over, the hill giant shaman suddenly felt that something was missing from his left chest. He lowered his head and saw a neat hole in his body at the position of his heart. Through the hole, he could even see the scenery behind him. This size, is it the iron ball just now? The hill giant shaman seemed to understand. The next second, blood spurted out from the blood vessels connected to the heart, pouring out from both sides of the hole. The backlash caused by the breaking of the protective spell and the interruption of the high-level spell being cast made its soul feel like a knife, and it could not immediately release the healing spell to save its life. The hill giant shaman fell down with his eyes wide open, and his heart was full of doubts before he died. Is this a spell? Why is there no spell aura? Why can this iron ball be so fast? Why can an ordinary iron ball cause so much damage to it? But these questions may not be answered by anyone after it falls into the hell of Beta and becomes ding dang in the devil's bag. The speed of the electromagnetic gun is really terrifying, faster than when tested underwater. Perhaps the seawater has an impact on the acceleration of the projectile during the charging acceleration stage. Long N, who killed the high-ranking hill giant shaman in one shot, thought expressionlessly about the changes that occurred during the release of the electromagnetic gun. The air also has resistance. If a vacuum chamber is preset in advance during the acceleration stage of the projectile, will the speed of the electromagnetic gun be faster? With a casual finger, or thunderbolt was triggered, which burned the head of the hill giant roaring at him below. Long N, who was dazed on the battlefield, came back to his senses. Long N glanced at the hill giant shaman lying on the ground in the warg beside the hill giant shaman's body. The ferocious and bloodthirsty evil warg actually lay on the ground with its tail between its legs in fear, looking at Long N flatteringly with a submissive look. Long N took out the high-level soul staff and released the 6-ring spell engraved on the corpse of the hill giant shaman, whose eyes were wide open, but not completely lost their spirit. An illusory and transparent spirit was extracted from the hill giant shaman's brain by an invisible force, needed a white ball, and fell into Long N's claws. A resentful and ferocious face appeared on the white ball, exactly the same as the dead hill giant shaman. The imprisoned soul is not an object, and cannot be put into the storage ring. Without a specific magic prop for storing souls, Long N could only hold the soul ball in his claws first. But fortunately, this imprisonment state can last for several hours. Long N can solve the current problem first, and then slowly deal with the soul of the hill giant shaman. Seeing the current strength of the clan army, Long N was very satisfied. Without the existence of the higher level spellcaster shaman, the clan army can completely rely on its own strength to eliminate this group of hill giants, but there is no need to have more unnecessary casualties. Long N hovered in the air, and his lightning bolts accurately hit the hill giants immersed in the battle. In the place where the hill giants gathered, Long N exhaled a breath, and a large amount of plasma turned into a mesh of lightning that was different from the ordinary blue dragon column lightning breath, covering a large area of hill giants, turning them into charred corpses without any gaps to dodge. With Long N's participation, the situation of the battle immediately tilted. After half of the 800 hill giants died, they finally fled in disarray, and were caught up and killed one by the army of their clans. In the end, a few collapsed hill giants put down their weapons, hugged their heads, stuck out their buttocks, and trembled on the ground. With the demonstration, the rest of the hill giants also gave up running away, and chose to surrender. In this battle, many of Long N's clansmen died, mostly jackals and dog-headed people. They reproduced quickly, so Long N didn't feel bad about some casualties. However, 2 dragon vein minotaurs were seriously injured and died, which made Long N a little depressed. There are only a few hundred of these minotaurs transformed with his own blood, and losing one is a huge loss. Long N looked at the nearly 200 hill giant slaves lined up and escorted to the territory, which barely saved his blood. He raised his dragon claws and looked at the ferocious face that was still roaring silently in the white soul ball. Long N could only hope to dig out some good things from the brain of this hill giant shaman. I was busy at school for a long time, so today's update is a little late. Chapter 106 Battle of Souls. The clan army brought the extraordinary materials such as skin, eyeballs, and hearts collected from the corpses of the hill giants, and escorted nearly 200 hill giants back to Dragon Nest Town. Long N stayed where he was. He had to continue to go north to personally investigate the situation of the hill giant tribe. Long N landed on the ground, and next to him was the battlefield, where the two sides had fought before. More than 600 hill giants were stripped of their important parts, leaving only the worthless and difficult to transport flesh and blood. The bloody smell that rose to the sky attracted many carnivorous beasts or extraordinary creatures in the forest, but they were afraid of Long N, who was huge and naturally exuded dragon power. They did not dare to approach, and could only drag away the scattered hill giant corpses on the edge of the battlefield. The fishy smell of blood penetrated into Long N's nasal cavity, but in his true dragon sense of smell, it turned into an attractive fragrance, which made Long N secrete saliva involuntarily. Except for some metal dragons and some gem dragons of good or neutral camps, other true dragons would not resist eating intelligent creatures. Humans, orcs, dwarves, giants and other intelligent creatures are all on their menus. Some 5-colored dragons even prefer to eat elves. According to them, the flesh and blood of elves are very tender and delicious. The best way to cook them is to steam them, or grill them without spices, until they are half done. Long N knew that this was the instinct of the real dragon's body gradually assimilating himself, making his perception and thinking closer and closer to the real dragon. He did not resist this transformation, but part of his human memory made him really lose his appetite for these humanoid creatures. Swallowing his saliva, Long N shook his head. What a pity, it smells quite fragrant. I wonder how it tastes if I use my breath to electrocute it. Retracting his spirit, Long N stared at the soul ball in his hand, watching the hideous soul body in it roaring silently and emitting circles of weak soul fluctuations. Under the effect of high-level soul confinement, even the soul of a high-level caster can hardly have any impact on the outside world. The soul fluctuations it emits can at most make ordinary mortals have nightmares and get seriously ill. The real danger is inside this soul ball. Searching for memories and knowledge in other people's souls is a big risk for Long N, who is not a professional necromancer. Adjusting his breathing and concentrating his mind, Long N released his mental power to explore the soul ball. Long N's mental power tentacles entered the soul ball, and the scene in front of him instantly changed into a scene that was constantly developing and changing, just like entering a movie clip. In these clips, Long N sometimes studied shaman spells, sometimes cut the flesh and bones of some beasts, and sometimes argued with other shamans. But more clips were daily eating, drinking, defecating, talking with other hill giants, and reproducing with female hill giants. Long N knew that these were the memories of this hill giant shaman. Ordinary people who rashly contacted other people's memories would usually sink and get lost in these memories that did not belong to them, but seemed to be experienced personally. And getting lost in the memories of others, at the least, the soul would split and become mentally ill, and in severe cases, it would even directly become dementia without the ability to think, or the soul would directly dissipate and die. Long N, who knew the danger, steadied his mind, broke free from the illusory memories, and condensed his own real dragon form in these constantly changing memory fragments. I was still a little rash. I should have made more preparations for such a dangerous task as soul searching. Long N secretly reflected in his heart. He had been smooth sailing since he came to this world. He could win without any danger, even when he encountered a strong enemy. This made him a little inflated and lost his due caution. It should also be influenced by the arrogant nature of the real dragon. As one of the most powerful races in the world, even the weak young dragons will not take creatures other than real dragons seriously, especially since he is a 5-colored dragon. The stronger the 5-colored dragon, the more obvious its arrogant nature will be. If Long N was a red dragon ranked first among the 5-colored dragons, he would probably have been so arrogant that his tail would be up to the sky when he killed the incarnation of the demon. The memory fragments around him suddenly accelerated the speed of change, as if they had turned into a dangerous whirlpool, which was about to trap Long N deeply. Long N raised his eyebrows and focused his attention so that he would not get lost in these memories. Arms quietly stretched out from those changing memory fragments and reached towards Long N's body, which was condensed with spiritual power. Long N swept his tail and crushed those arms, saying, "If you want to get out, hurry up, don't waste time with these useless little moves." Perhaps seeing that the sneak attack was ineffective, or perhaps being angered by Long N's words, the rotating and changing memory fragments instantly shattered, turning into sharp fragments and shooting towards Long N. Each fragment hit Long N, tearing apart Long N's condensed spiritual body, and then quickly dissolved and filled into Long N's body, pouring a stream of chaotic memories into Long N's mind. HMPH. Long N guarded his mind and continuously poured his spiritual power into this body, condensed by spiritual power. The powerful spiritual power of the real dragon instantly allowed Long N to regain the advantage. The huge spiritual power vibrated and directly crushed the memory fragments flying towards Long N. An illusory hill giant soul rushed into the vibrating spiritual power crazily, flying towards Long N with resentment and hatred. Long N's eyes narrowed slightly and he said, "It's over." A spike of spiritual power pierced into the soul of the hill giant shaman and exploded instantly, blowing it into a collection of spiritual power and soul fragments flying all over the sky. The consciousness in the soul was completely dead, and the entire soul began to disintegrate rapidly. Long N expanded his spiritual power and wrapped and absorbed all the soul fragments as much as possible. Without professional means, Long N could only choose this rough method. As pieces of memory fragments merged, Long N quickly browsed the life of this hill giant shaman. In its memory, Long N also saw Grengo, who was deformed and thin compared to other hill giants. Both of them were objects of exclusion by other shamans, so it had some communication with Grengo, this weird guy. It turns out that Grengo is a hybrid of human and hill giant. TSK. This sexual fetish is really strange for a female hill giant. But unfortunately, Long N did not know the true purpose of these hill giants from its memory. It was also excluded like Glengo, and only received orders from the great shaman, and knew nothing else. Just when Long N thought he would not make any more discoveries, a piece of memory merged into his mind. A pair of dark evil eyes opened in its mind, revealing a strange and cold gaze that made Long N feel like he was seen through. Long N's eyes widened, and without hesitation he took out the soul staff and pointed it at his head. Soul explosion. The humble author is asking for votes online, and friends who are interested can join the group to play WoW. Chapter 107 Eyes in the Soul. Soul explosion. The 7-ring high-level soul attack spell ingrained in the soul staff was triggered instantly. Long N immediately felt as if his mind was being bombarded in turns, constantly exploding, roaring, and shaking. The soul-tearing feeling was much more serious than the backlash of a failed spell, and Long N, who was gritting his teeth, could not help but groan in pain. The condensed mental power was destroyed and disintegrated under the attack of the high-level spell, but fortunately, the evil black eyes condensed in his mind were also directly shattered by Long N's decisive attack. After the mental power was re-aggregated, Long N checked his mind at the first time, and did not find any evil breath or strange existence, and the stone in his heart fell to the ground. In the illusion of the world spinning, and the center of gravity being unbalanced, Long N stabilized his body, closed his eyes tightly, and calmed the violent fluctuations remaining in his mind. This is definitely not the power of the hill giant shaman itself, and there is no memory related to it in its memory fragments. So, was that thing secretly put into its soul by someone else? The person who could quietly act on a high-level spellcaster and transform its soul could only be a legendary spellcaster, and he must have a deep study of the spells of the dead and soul. The great shaman of the hill giant? According to Glengo, the great shaman of the hill giant tribe is extremely powerful and has long been a legend. His strength is unfathomable. He has also lived for a long time and outlasted generations of hill giant leaders. It is likely that he has a lot of research on the faction of dead spirits and soul spells. Long N had a vague guess, but he couldn't figure out why the great shaman who could only override the hill giant leader and truly control the entire hill giant tribe would do this. If it was ordinary protection or surveillance, with its status and strength, it could have said it directly to other hill giant shamans, and it would not have attracted any criticism or resistance. Why would it be so troublesome to prevent these shamans from noticing and leaving marks in their souls? Shaking his head, Long N felt extremely weak mentally, accompanied by waves of twitching pain in his brain. The real dragon's body has a strong ability to heal itself, but the damage to the soul can only be recovered slowly. Waving the dragon wings that were weak due to mental weakness, Long N rose into the sky. In this state, he must be unable to go to the north to investigate the situation of the hill giants for the time being. Long N decided to return to the dragon's nest to heal the injuries on his soul first. In addition, if the evil gaze was really implanted into the soul of this shaman by the hill giant shaman, then there is a high probability that Glengo's soul has been tampered with. The dragon wings waved weakly, and Long N simply released the spell, letting the airflow condensed by the spell carry his body forward. With a thought, Long N dispersed the breeze summoned by the spell under the dragon wings, and slowly landed in front of the newly built dragon's nest. The newly built dragon's nest was still built on the same knife-like cliff. This time, under Long's order, the dog-headed people directly dug out a space inside the dragon's nest that was enough for a real dragon with a body length of 50 meters to move around. In the short term, Long did not have to worry about his body suddenly growing in size after sleeping and damaging the dragon's nest. Lying on the pile of glittering treasures, Long's weakened mental strength felt a little relieved, and even the pain in his mind was relieved a lot. After casually asking the dog-headed people standing in the dragon's nest to summon Glengo, Long closed his eyes directly, put his head on the cold gold coins and gems, and began to take a nap. After realizing that a creature had entered his perception range, Long woke up slowly, and felt that the trauma of his soul had recovered slightly. Seeing Glengo bowing deeply, and saluting with piety and humility, Long said slowly, "There is a hill giant shaman among the hill giants who went south this time. You should know him. His name is Neilni." Glengo bowed his head and said, "Yes, great master, I have worked with him before, and we are quite familiar with each other. I killed him." Glengo's expression did not change when he heard this. Long continued, "Then I devoured his soul, and found some interesting things in his soul." Glengo did not speak, still maintaining a respectful and humble posture, waiting for Long to finish. In its soul, in addition to its own memory, it was also stuffed with an evil mark by a powerful spellcaster. Long slowly recounted the process of killing the hill giant shaman and exploring his soul, and also described the pair of dark evil eyes in detail. Glengo thought for a moment, and his face became ugly. He could probably guess who left the mark in the soul that Long mentioned, and was also afraid that the person who left the mark would come to trouble him. Glengo immediately said, "Master, the great shaman has done a very in-depth study of the dead and the soul. This is most likely its method." Long N nodded, "I think so, but what is its purpose?" Glengo frowned, unable to think of the possible reason. Seeing that Glengo had no clue, Long N could only start to eliminate the hidden dangers in Glengo. Let go of your guard. Let me check your soul to see if it has also been secretly marked. Glengo, who had signed a slave contract, did not show any dissatisfaction and calmly removed all his defenses against the soul. Long N took out the soul staff and held it in his claws, ready to throw a soul blast at Glengo's head at any time. Although his soul is weak now, he still has the mental power to activate the magic equipment. Long N's mental power penetrated into Glengo's soul and carefully browsed every memory. In this process, Long N knew about Glengo's life and its secrets, as well as those experiences of discrimination and humiliation, which were all presented in front of Long N. As the two jumping memory fragments appeared one after another, a pair of dark evil eyes flashed in the gap between the memory fragments. Found it. Long N immediately activated the staff in his hand. Because of the slave contract, Glengo, who was defenseless under Long N's order, immediately covered his head and fell to the ground, rolling wildly, screaming and wailing. His brain was in great pain and congestion, bursting fragile blood vessels, and blood oozing from his eyes, ears, and nose. Regardless of Glengo's miserable appearance, Long N seized the time to search quickly, and only felt relieved after finding a pair of black eyes that were disappearing. The pair of evil black eyes turned to Long N before completely disappearing, and looked at Long N deeply. Long N's heart tightened, and he almost made up another soul explosion. After a while, Glengo woke up from his mental breakdown, and climbed up with difficulty. "Thank you, Great Master, for helping me remove the hidden dangers in my soul." Long N waved his hand, signaling Glengo to leave on his own. The end of the Storm Mountains and the far northernmost part of the Onia continent. In a simple temple carved into the mountain, a figure sitting cross-legged on the ground with a hunched back and 4 meters tall slowly raised his head, revealing a face as dry as a skeleton under a fur hood. The dark eyes without whites cast an evil gaze to the south. The dark eyes could not reveal the expression in them, and only the slightly wrinkled brows could show a little doubt at the moment. In the end, the skinny and withered giant who looked like a skeleton said nothing, closed his eyes again, and lowered his head. Chapter 108. So weird. Take another look. The dark crown rose from the pile of gold coins, and the shining gold coin slid down from the huge blue head, making a pleasant sound. Long N opened his eyes. After eating, Long N had a short sleep, but the short sleep here was only relative to the real dragon. In the eyes of short-lived humans, the harvest month has ended, and even the frost month has passed for most of the year. They have spent another 12th of the year. The injury to the soul has finally recovered completely. Long N's mind is now clear, and he no longer has the dizzy feeling when he just released the soul explosion on himself. Although I haven't met that big shaman yet, I remember this grudge. Long N was already wary of the hill giant tribe in the north. Not to mention that those hill giants have been going south to cause trouble. Just because Long N wants to develop his territory, sooner or later he will grow to the point of facing those mortal enemies of the real dragons. Even if Long N himself doesn't want to cause trouble, those brainless hill giants can't tolerate him as a real dragon. Long N knew early on that, unless he ran farther away, to the southern part of the Onia continent, away from the Storm Mountains, or simply went to another continent, there would be a battle between him and the hill giants. It was just a matter of time. Long N would be happy to delay for hundreds or thousands of years, and wait until he was strong and his territory had developed into a great help, before he could destroy those giants who were naturally hostile to him. But judging from the current situation, those hill giants who seemed to want to make trouble would not let Long N have the time to survive. This made Long N want to go to the hill giant tribe to find out, even though he knew that the other party had a legend sitting in front of him. After all, only by figuring out what the other party wanted to do, he could make better decisions and judgments, and understand what he should do. But before that, Long N took out the giant book made of gold, the end of the element, from the storage ring. After the end of the Bolan Civil War, Long N was still thinking about how to keep this treasure with him, but he didn't expect Ryan to take the initiative, to ask him to continue to keep the end of the element, as if he would not take back the book until the legend was gone. Long N was pleased with this and readily agreed. Originally, Long N who had ended his 3-year slumber and had greatly increased his strength, was going to try to open the end of the element after he had completely adapted to his current strength after returning from the expedition to the hill giant tribe. But now, Long N, who had not yet officially gone to the north to explore and had returned from his injuries to recuperate, decided to try to open the first page first. The huge dragon claws pressed on the golden pages, complementing the equally huge book. Long N's front paws clasped the gap between the pages, and according to the experience of the previous attempts, he took a deep breath and mobilized all his strength to pour into his front paws. Long N exerted force suddenly, ready to face huge resistance. Wow. The expected resistance did not appear, and the first page of the end of the element was instantly opened under Long N's huge force, just as easy as opening an ordinary biography or notebook. Long N's center of gravity was shifted by his own huge force, and his body tilted in the direction of the force, and he hurried to stabilize his body. Long N was a little stunned for a moment when he turned the first page so easily. When he came to his senses, he looked at the open page. There was no text on the page, only a bright spot imprinted on the golden page. Long N raised his eyebrows and tentatively touched the bright spot with his fingertips. A string of numbers suddenly appeared in his mind. This seems to be a coordinate, Long N guessed, while checking the numbers in his mind. The string of numbers was divided into 3 sections by 2 separators. After Long N moved up and down and left and right for a while, he determined that this was a coordinate representing the straight line distance, horizontal distance and height distance respectively. Although he got the coordinate position, Long N didn't know what he could find according to this coordinate. The end of the element did not give any hints. Perhaps this coordinate marked the location of a secondary element space, or perhaps Long N would get nothing after reaching the coordinate position. However, judging from the benefits other people got from opening the end of the element, the coordinate Long N got should not be too bad. According to the parameters of the coordinates, Long N estimated the approximate direction of the coordinate destination, and found that the location of this coordinate was not on the continent of Onia, but in a more northern position. The northern sea of Onia, or the continent of Runia. After crossing the sea, Long N was going to the north to investigate the situation of the hill giants, so he could continue to go north to see what this coordinate was. He turned to the first page and only got a coordinate that he didn't know what it was used for. This kind of card pull lottery like reward made Long N sigh. He could only pray that he was lucky enough this time and won the golden legend. Just as he was about to close the golden giant book, Long N suddenly stopped the claws that were closing the pages. The first page was so easy to open. Will it be possible to open the second page? According to the experience of Ryan's family in mastering this elemental in 400s of years, no one under the legend could successfully open 2 pages. But Long N felt that in his case, maybe the second page would also be possible. He said he would try it anyway. There would be no loss if he failed. Long N put the tip of his claws in the seam of the second page and began to exert force. This time he felt obvious resistance, but it was not invincible. Under Long N's great strength, the second golden page gradually appeared in front of Long N. It actually worked. Long N was about to breathe a sigh of relief and moved his eyes to the page, but he was stunned by the words and pictures that appeared in the final chapter of Element. The breath he raised was directly stuck in his throat. After being stunned for more than 10 seconds, Long N closed the page with a strange expression. I must have seen it wrong. It's normal that my eyesight is a little bad after waking up. He opened the page again and looked at the unchanged content of the page. Long N was silent for a while. Lines of logically reasonable but extremely weird content appeared in Long N's eyes. When electric current passes through a conductor, a magnetic field will be generated in the space around the conductor. The magnetic field surrounds the conductor. The greater the current flowing through the conductor, the stronger the magnetic field generated. The electromagnetic gun uses the force generated by the electromagnetic field in the electromagnetic system to accelerate the metal shells so that it can reach the required strong kinetic energy. The basic principle is to use the force that pushes the conductor when it is energized in the magnetic field. Long N. The weirdness of the matter was a little beyond Long N's imagination. These electromagnetic related principles in the production drawings of the electromagnetic gun, as well as the proportions of the component materials used to make the electromagnetic gun, are too inconsistent with this magical world. These things should not exist in this world. After taking a deep breath, Long N still couldn't believe it, and closed the book again, and opened it again. It's so weird. Take another look. Chapter 109, Hill Giant Tribe. After trying to open the third page without success, Long N put the final chapter of Element back into his storage ring. He would not touch the giant book made of gold again in the short term. The content of the second page made Long N's back feel a little cold for some reason. The amount of information behind these things was too much, and he needed to digest it well. As for the electromagnetic cannon, this thing was too powerful, and was enough to threaten the lives of powerful creatures including Long N. For his own safety, Long N would definitely not take out the production drawings of the electromagnetic cannon at this stage. At least he had to wait until Long N was promoted to a legend. His strength was strong enough, and he grew to the point where he was not afraid of the electromagnetic cannon, and then he would be able to give it to his family for production. This kind of weapon, that only needs various metals to make, and whose power can rival the blow of a high-level spellcaster, once leaked, will inevitably have a great impact on the whole world. The storage of various metal minerals in the crust of this world is very large, and the materials can be almost endless. It is not a pity to build hundreds of electromagnetic cannons at will. Once a war breaks out, the situation will easily become, what? You found more than 10 high-ranking mages to join the battle? Take my 300 electromagnetic cannons first. The scene was so beautiful that Long N felt uncomfortable just thinking about it. After preparing again, Long N understood and arranged the affairs of the territory, stepped out of the dragon's nest, and was about to spread his wings and fly into the sky. Just as his wings were spread, a white dragon shadow suddenly flew from a distance and landed beside Long N. Long N glanced at the broken scales, stained with blood and blackened carbon, fighting with Agadius again. Haven't fought yet? Since the first meeting, the two guys, Long Jessis and Agadius, have become mortal enemies. The former looked down on the latter's identity as a hybrid sub-dragon, and the latter was jealous of the former's pride because of his identity as a real dragon, even though he was not very strong. Whenever the two dragons met, they would usually sneer at each other, and even fight if they disagreed. Only in front of Long N would they restrain themselves a little, and dare not act recklessly. Originally, Galaxus and Agadius were of similar size, and Galaxus, as a true dragon, was stronger in close combat or breath. Every time they fought, the two dragons could fight evenly at the beginning, but as time went on, Galaxus would gradually gain the upper hand with the power of a pure-blooded true dragon and suppress Agadius. But after Long fell asleep, everything was different. As Long grew rapidly in his sleep, Agadius, who was connected to him by blood, also gained a lot of benefits from his blood. During the 3 years that Long was asleep, Agadius's originally bloated body did not change much, but the characteristics of a true dragon on his body became more and more obvious. The dragon horns and dragon wings were much larger than before, and they looked much more coordinated. Even the size grew from more than 16 meters to 18 meters, and it suddenly entered the ranks of super large dragons. This made Galaxus suffer. The battle between the two dragons gradually changed from Galaxus being in the upper hand to a draw, and then gradually turned into Agadius using his size advantage to chase Galaxus in a melee. How arrogant Galaxus was before, how embarrassed he is now. Now he even runs away in advance when he feels the dragon power emanating from Agadius, so as not to be beaten up for his bad words after beating him. Galaxus smiled awkwardly and said, "That stupid guy is your subordinate after all. For your sake, I didn't use my full strength on him. But that guy didn't know what was good for him, and he was getting more and more careless. I was careless, and suffered a loss, which led to this situation. That guy is getting more and more excessive. You must punish him well." Looking at Galaxus, who was complaining righteously, Long N said, "Don't make excuses for failure, Galaxus. Admit it. Agadius is stronger than you now." Galaxus's disguised face immediately collapsed, turning into deep embarrassment and indignation. "Then it also became stronger with your bloodline. That is not its own power at all." Long N smiled and shook his head without saying anything more. As long as the two guys still follow his orders and don't kill each other, he doesn't bother to care. However, he didn't know how long it would take for him to leave this time. Without him watching, these two guys who are increasingly resentful might make some trouble. Long N thought for a moment and said to Galaxus, I need to go north to do something, maybe to the lunar continent. You came from Lunia, so come with me. The territory will not be in any danger at the moment, and some minor troubles can be solved by the familiar army and Egadius. Long N simply took Galaxus away and separated the two enemies. When he heard that he was leaving the territory, Galaxus shrank his neck. He would rather stay in the territory and not go anywhere. Here, Long N's familiar would prepare food for him, and when he landed in the human city, there would be people praising and worshipping him, which greatly satisfied his vanity. Even if he had to avoid Egadius, the annoying hybrid red dragon in the territory, Galaxus was unwilling to run outside the territory. The lazy nature of the real dragon was fully reflected in him. But he dared not disobey Long N's order, and could only respond weakly, yes, Great Lord of Storms. Two real dragons, one blue and one white, flew high into the sky one after another, flying north along the towering storm mountains. After flying for 2 days, Long N suddenly found several conspicuous humanoid creatures in the forest ahead. They were a group of hill giants who were hunting with wargs. Unlike those hill giants who migrated south, this group of hill giants were not all young and strong. Half of them were old hill giants, which could be seen from the dirty and messy beards on their faces. Long N informed Galaxus and asked it to keep an eye on this group of hunting hill giants while he accelerated and flew forward. After circling around, Long N finally found a large group of huge stone houses and caves on a raised hill, in which many hill giants and giant cubs lived. This hill giant tribe is not big. Judging from the scale, there are only hundreds of hill giants living there. Moreover, Long N and his team have only been flying for more than 2 days. This is obviously not the large hill giant tribe he is looking for. It is more like a branch tribe developed from a large tribe. However, this is exactly what Long N wants. Before going to the large hill giant tribe, he can first look for useful clues in this small tribe. I have confirmed that I will defend my thesis at the end of the month. I will be very busy during this period. I have only finished coding now, so I don't expect votes. I kowtow to everyone. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 110, Statue. Galaxus hid in the cloud created by the cloud and mist spell, and his white scales blended into the cloud and mist, making it difficult to detect. Staring at the hill giants who were driving the bison herd to hunt in the open woodland below, Galaxus was eager to try. The hatred of giants in the blood of the true dragon made Galaxus very eager to fight at this time, and he wanted to fly down immediately and freeze these dirty giants into ice sculptures with his breath. After being expelled by the white dragon lady in his infancy, Galaxus came to the Onia Storm Mountains to avoid the frost giants in the ice and snow wasteland in the north of Runia continent. He has lived there for more than 80 years. Compared with the hill giants, their close relatives, the frost giants, are smarter and more powerful, and they hate the real dragons more. At the same time, the white dragons and frost giants living in the ice and snow wasteland in the north of Runia often clash. Sadly, the white dragons are usually the losers. After being defeated, the captured adult white dragons would be beheaded and scaled by the frost giants and eaten as prey. The young white dragons would be tortured and enslaved by the frost giants and then domesticated into slaves like hounds. Out of fear of the frost giants, Galaxus also hated the hill giants more and more. If it weren't for Long's order, he would have already pounced and torn the hill giants. That made him feel disgusted into pieces. Galaxus, if I can't cure the frost giants, I can't cure you. Question mark? After waiting for a long time, after several hill giants and wargs were covered with bison corpses, Galaxus finally saw a blue dot flying in the distant sky. Kill them all. Long's voice transmitted by the communication spell rang in his mind, and Galaxus's face instantly turned into a hateful grin, and he swooped down quickly. Even if the white dragon was the weakest 5-colored dragon, an adult white dragon was much more powerful than other creatures. Several hill giants and wargs were quickly killed by Galaxus. Looking at the bloody claws of Galaxus, who was still not satisfied, Long N did not expect that this coward could have such a brutal side. After quickly dealing with this hill giant hunting team, under Long N's leadership, the two real dragons came to the sky above the small hill giant tribe that Long N had discovered. Long N tilted his head towards the hill giant tribe below, signaling Garanxus to continue. Looking at the tribe below, which was estimated to be home to hundreds of hill giants, Garanxus shrank his neck and said angrily, I seem to have a stomach ache. I felt a little uncomfortable in my stomach after fighting with those hill giants just now. Long N's face was full of black lines. A coward is still a coward, so he could only let him give Garanxus some motivation. Stop talking nonsense. Get down. Long N, who was flying higher, kicked Garanxus on the back, causing Garanxus to howl and fall towards the hill giant tribe. He used a mirage to hide his body and followed Garanxus closely, staring at a stone house in the center of the tribe that was decorated with various skulls and obviously had a higher status. Garanxus attracted the attention of the hill giants in the tribe. The stone house in the center of the tribe also cast several spells at him before Garanxus fell to the ground. Judging from the ring level and aura of the spell, the hill giant shaman who cast the spell was only a mid-level spellcaster, far less powerful than Grengo who was sent south, and another high-level spellcaster hill giant shaman killed by Long N. After roughly figuring out the strength of these hill giants, Long N's scales flashed with lightning, and an electromagnetic cannon directly destroyed the stone house where the shaman lived, killing the shaman who cast the spell inside. The rest of the hill giants were even less to be feared. Now that Long N was 19 meters long, he directly crashed into the hill giant tribe. Whether he waved his dragon claws, swung his dragon tail, or released electricity to build a thunder field, he could easily harvest the lives of the hill giants. Coupled with spells and breath, even a few hill giants that were 6 or 7 meters tall would be quickly killed by Long N. There was no one in the entire hill giant tribe who could withstand Long N's attack for more than 3 moves. Seeing Long N's great power, Garanxus also became brave and rushed through the hill giant tribe, relying on his size advantage to specifically deal with some newly adult hill giants and hill giant cubs. Some hill giant cubs that were more than 1 or 2 meters tall rushed towards Long N with wooden sticks and were also turned into charcoal by the thunder that Long N instantly triggered. Long N would not have the slightest pity or psychological burden for these hill giant cubs. Enemies were enemies, even cubs. The remaining hill giants were no match for Lon and Garanxus. After being slaughtered unilaterally, some of them began to flee. Lon sped up the slaughter and chased after the fleeing hill giants, but some of them still fled into the dense forest or other hidden hiding places. Without their followers, Lon and Garanxus could not keep all the hill giants, so it was inevitable that some of them would escape. These hill giants would definitely report back to the main tribe, but Lon was not in a hurry. They just had to investigate the situation before the fleeing hill giants returned to report. The flying speed of a real dragon is much faster than the speed of a hill giant running on the ground, so Lon was not worried at all. Passing Garanxus, who had a satisfied killing expression on his face, Lon's dragon tail swept away the bodies of the hill giants and the ruins of the stone house and inspected the items in the stone house but found nothing. After searching all the way to the stone house full of bone ornaments where the shaman lived, Long N used the magic hand to drag the shaman killed by the electromagnetic cannon out from under the stone pile, stripped off the magic equipment he carried, and put it away, and continued to search among the rubble and stones. If there are really useful clues here, it is likely to be in the house where the highest ranking shaman lives. The dragon claw-shaped magic hand turned over the stones, grabbed one item after another from the stones, and sent them to Long N, but they were all ordinary and useless things. Suddenly, Long N's mental power detected a trace of chaos and evil. Following the source of the breath, Long N used his dragon tail to sweep away a huge stone, and found a statue stuck in the gap of the stone pile. Long N rolled up the statue with the tip of his tail, and took it to his eyes for a closer look. This statue is half a meter high, and is carved from some special solid stone, but the carving skills are not very good, and it can even be said to be crude. It can only be barely recognized that the carving is a humanoid creature leaning on a stick, and carrying a javelin. The sculpture was extremely crude and the details were unclear, but Garanxus was able to identify the sculptor the moment he saw the tip of Ron's tail curled up. Grelanta, the god of the hill giants. Chapter 111 Investigation. The god of hill giants, Grelanta. Long N carefully recalled some of the simple records he had read in the books. He only knew that this was a chaotic and evil giant god, whose followers were mostly evil creatures such as hill giants, scumbag giants, two-headed giants, and ogres. Perhaps because of his own stupidity, this chaotic god extremely hated music, poetry, fine works of art, and all civilized things, because he could not, or did not know how to use them, which might be the reason why his statues were so crude. It was said that after this giant god was born, he was too short and stupid, so he was contemptuously called a dwarf by his elders and brothers and sisters. Therefore, he was always keen to kill creatures that were shorter than him for fun, and his followers did the same to please their gods. In addition, this god also had the priesthood of fighting and conflict, so his followers, especially the hill giants who lived in tribes, often attacked some human towns or cities, where there were the most short creatures. Long N thought for a moment, and then he tightened the muscles on his dragon's tail, crushed the statue, and continued to fly north with Galangsus. After flying for half a day, Long N found a small hill giant tribe on the way, with a population of about 100 to 200. After quickly destroying the tribe with the force of thunder, Long N also found the statue of the hill giant god Grelanto in the house where the shaman lived. On the journey again, Long N no longer attacked the small hill giant tribes along the way, but only memorized the number and location of the tribe in his mind. 2 days later, Long N, flying in the sky, squinted his eyes and carefully identified the creatures on the ground, confirming that it was a group of hill giants. Unlike the hunting teams of the small tribes before, this group of hill giants was generally about 5 meters tall. All of them were strong and middle-aged hill giants, without the old and weak mixed in. We are almost at the lair of those hill giants. Increase the altitude. Long N reminded Galangsus, and the two dragons controlled the high altitude wind to climb. The main tribe of the hill giants has a legendary spellcaster in charge. Legendary perception is particularly sharp, especially this one is an old immortal legendary spellcaster who has been a legend for who knows how many years. Spellcasters are always known for their strong mental power, and their perception ability will only be stronger. The altitude that Long N and his team just flew at cannot guarantee absolute safety. They flew above the clouds in one breath, and a vast sea of clouds came into view. At this altitude, even a powerful real dragon like Long N felt a little breathless. Thousands of meters above the ground, Long N and Galangsus continued to fly forward. Everything on the ground seemed small, but the powerful visual range of the real dragon still allowed Long N to easily distinguish the scene below. After flying for 2 hours, a large group of buildings located on a hill terrace came into Long N's sight. In the northern part of Onia, in the deciduous forest that turned yellow after winter, a large grey-black stone building was so conspicuous that it didn't even need to be searched deliberately. It suddenly appeared in the forest, making it difficult for people to ignore it. Long estimated that the area of this stone building complex was at least as large as 2 Boran capitals. As Grengo said, there were tens of thousands of hill giants living in it. It was unknown how these hill giants who only knew how to hunt and did not produce could feed so many people. Go to the other side and take note of all the strange buildings or places. Pay attention to your own safety. If something goes wrong, run away immediately, Long said to Galangsus using the teleportation spell. He had already reminded Galangsus that there was a legendary spellcaster in this tribe. With Galangsus's brain, he should not do anything stupid. They started to act separately. Long hovered in the sky, slightly lowered his altitude, hid in the clouds, and carefully observed the hill giant tribe below through the gaps in the thick clouds. There was plenty of water vapor in the north of Onia, and there was little sunshine. The sky in early winter was full of clouds condensed by water vapor, so Long did not need to release the cloud spell himself, avoiding the risk of the fluctuations during the spell casting being detected by the legendary spellcaster. Controlling his sight, and not staring at the tower in the center of the tribe, Long scanned the stone buildings that looked not much different. The construction skills of the hill giants are as bad as asking their gods to play the harp. They can build stone houses that are big enough to accommodate them without collapsing, thanks to their affinity with the earth, which allows them to make rocks stick to each other to a certain extent. In this case, the buildings built by the hill giants are all strange and bizarre, and it is impossible to judge which buildings have problems from their appearance. After scanning for a long time, Long N finally found something strange. In the direction of the Storm Mountains, a team of hill giants were pushing wheelbarrows full of bulging cloth bags towards a building in the tribe. After arriving at the building for a while, only empty wheelbarrows were left. When they came out, Long N's eyes were slightly fixed. Whether it was a wheelbarrow or a cloth bag, it was impossible for these hill giants to make it. They seemed too civilized and incompatible with these barbaric hill giants. The brain capacity of these hill giants can only support them to string animal bones together as decorations. Carpentry and weaving will only make their already fragile brains short circuit and smoke. While thinking, Long N suddenly noticed that the sky around him began to darken rapidly. Long N's heart tightened, and he accelerated instantly, flying towards Galangsus. Galangsus, who was struggling to remove the inexplicable black flames on his body, collided with Long N, who was flying over. "Idiot. What did you do?" Facing Long N's fury, Galangsus said weakly, "There were too many clouds and I couldn't see clearly, so I flew down a little bit." Long N was so angry that he had a headache, but now was not the time to beat this guy. Seeing that the dark sky was closing faster and faster, and was about to wrap them up, Long N roared, "Use transfiguration." Galangsus quickly turned into the size of a miniature dragon, and was held in Long N's hand. All the static electricity contained in Long N's body was aroused, and the gem-like scales were shining brightly in the violent lightning, making Long N look like an overloaded light bulb. In his extreme state, Long N burst out with a speed that shocked Galangsus, and turned into a stream of blue light, rushing to the edge of the expanding black sky, and dangerously rushed out of the sky that was about to close. Long N looked back, and the sky behind him closed to form a huge black sphere. Based on intuition alone, Long N didn't think that falling into it would have any good end. In Long N's sight, the dark sky transformed into a pair of evil eyes that were 100 meters in size, staring closely at Long N, who was fleeing. The sense of crisis in his heart rose sharply, and Long N's speed, which had just slowed down, increased again. However, the gaze of that giant eye was always like a maggot attached to his bones, and he couldn't get rid of it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 112, Chase and Escape. In order to get rid of the sight that made his back shiver, Long N accelerated and rushed into the clouds, turning and moving in the clouds, trying to use the thick clouds to block the sight of the evil eyes. After trying, Long N had already flown 20,000 to 30,000 meters away. Looking back, he could not see the giant eyes behind the clouds, but the sense of crisis in his heart did not decrease but increased. In the hill giant tribe, a hunchback, and 7 meters tall, shrouded in a robe made of animal skins, and a figure covered with bone ornaments walked out of the stairs leading to the underground. After walking out of the stairs, the hunchback figure raised his head and looked in the direction of Long N's flight in the sky, revealing a face as dry as a skeleton under the animal skin hood, and strange eyes without whites in the eye sockets. If Long N could recognize it here, this creature was the great shaman of the hill giant tribe that he saw in Glengo's memory. A huge 16-meter tall giant came to the great shaman with a heavy breath. The great shaman under the animal robe waved his hand and said in a hoarse voice, "They are just 2 newly adult 5-colored dragons. They will not have any impact on what we are going to do. You continue to deal with those low-level creatures and do your own thing." A gust of wind suddenly came, supporting the great shaman's feet, and gathered 2 wide wind wings behind it, carrying its body to chase in the direction of Long N. Overloading the current in his body non-stop, and exerting propulsion by creating an electric field, Long N did not dare to stop flying for more than 10 minutes. The current stored in the scales, muscles, and blood was consumed by nearly half, and Long N's speed slowly slowed down. Why can't these damn fires be extinguished? What kind of magic is this? I'm going to die. The warning signs in his heart have not subsided. At this time, he heard the screams of Galangsus. If it weren't for the fact that he was still useful, Long N would have wanted to directly crush this guy who was more trouble than help to death. The black fire on Galangsus's body had already spread to Long's claws. Long frowned, but did not feel any burning pain. But Long could feel that, while the black fire was burning, his vitality was also slowly being devoured by the black fire. Perhaps because there was too little black fire, the speed of this devouring was very slow, and it was not noticeable without careful feeling. But Galaxis was different. His body was almost covered with black fire, and the speed of vitality loss must be quite fast. However, they were still on the way to escape, and the two dragons could not think of any way to extinguish this strange black fire. As Long slowed down, the hill giant shaman who was chasing them quickly caught up. Feeling the malice coming from behind, Long hurriedly accelerated and quickly distanced himself from the shaman. After pulling away, Long changed direction, but was caught up by the shaman after a while. It was obvious that the other party had left a tracking mark on him. Facing several spells cast by the great shaman, Long tried his best to avoid the fatal ones and blocked the non-fatal spells with his claws. Ouch. My wings are broken. The great shaman who was hit by the spell wailed in Long's claws. Shut up. Long scolded. It's better for you to have broken wings than for me. Do you think you can escape with your speed when I'm injured? We will all die then. Great shaman thought about it and found that it seemed to be true. Long did not throw it down as a scapegoat, which was already a great kindness. It was better to be injured than to die here. Muttering a few words cursing the great shaman of the hill giant, great shaman of the hill giant, and then great shaman of the hill giant quietly calmed down. In the next 2 days, Long kept his nerves tense and did not dare to relax at all. Every time he accelerated to get rid of the great shaman of the hill giant, it would not take long for it to catch up again. Every time they caught up, it was a thrilling fight. With the help of the electromagnetic cannon, Long was able to repel the unprepared great shaman at the beginning, but as the electromagnetic cannon was used more and more times, Long could only use it to slow down its speed slightly and then speed up to get rid of it. When traveling normally, the real dragon can fly a certain distance and then glide in the sky to recover its physical strength, but at this moment of escaping, even the body of the real dragon began to feel tired in such a long and high-speed flight. On the other hand, the hill giant great shaman chasing them seemed to have endless mental power. He always released spells and followed Long slowly. Even if he caught up, he just threw a few spells casually, as if he didn't care about the two real dragons. Long began to suspect that the hill giant great shaman didn't really want their lives, but it kept chasing after Long and refused to let them go. This made Long completely unable to guess the other party's mind, and he could only try his best to escape. After all, he couldn't bet his life that the hill giant didn't want to kill them. After being caught up and fleeing again, Long looked at the coordinates he got from the end of the element in his mind. In order to prevent the hill giant shaman from guessing that he came from the south and directly going to his territory to cause damage, Long chose to fly north when he fled. At this time, they had already fled to the sea between the Aonian continent and the Runnian continent, and were getting closer and closer to the location of the coordinates. Go to that coordinate? This idea was immediately rejected by Long. Not to mention, whether the coordinates were dangerous or could provide him with a hiding place, Long would suffer a great loss if the hill giant shaman knew the secret of the coordinates. After making a decision, Long turned his direction again and flew away from the coordinates. After fleeing for another 2 days in mental tension and physical exhaustion, flying over the sea, a continent appeared in the eyes of Long and Galaxis. They fled from the Aonian continent to the Runnian continent. After flying into Runnian, Long's warning sign slowly faded, but he still did not dare to relax his vigilance and continued to fly north. The hill giant shaman stopped at the edge of the Runia continent, and with his dark eyes without any emotion, he glanced at the direction where Long fled, and then cast a spell to teleport back to the tribe. As soon as he returned to the tribe, the hill giant leader immediately came to him and bowed respectfully, and was slightly surprised that he did not bring back the bodies of the two dragon cubs. The great shaman raised his head, and his face, which was as dry as a skeleton under the animal skin hood, actually regained some vitality, and his back was not as hunched as before. His muscles grew again, and his dry skin became tough and elastic, as if he had benefited from the black fire that devoured his vitality. The white dragon doesn't matter, but most blue dragons live in clans. Killing it may attract a large group of damn blue dragons. We can't take these unnecessary risks at this juncture. Chapter 113 Heading to the north. Flying over the human towns along the coast, Long En landed in the pine forest until he reached the uninhabited wilderness. He took out a mid-level magic equipment from the storage ring and stuffed it into his mouth. Long En's sharp and powerful dragon teeth chewed the fine magic equipment and swallowed it into his stomach. True dragons can not only eat the flesh and blood of various creatures, digest gems, elemental crystals and other items containing extraordinary power, but they can even use their powerful stomachs to directly swallow rocks and soil, decompose them into the most basic elemental energy, and then absorb them. It can be said that there is nothing in this world that a true dragon cannot digest. After swallowing the magic equipment, the powerful digestion and absorption ability of the true dragon's stomach immediately started, greedily absorbing the elemental energy generated by the decomposition of the magic equipment. In the pursuit of the past few days, Long En relied on eating magic equipment to replenish energy, so that he could maintain the maximum speed and escape from the hands of the hill giant shaman several times. In a critical situation, the low-quality magic equipment could not quickly replenish enough energy, so Long En could only eat the 7th level lightning staff that overlapped with his ability, and was not very useful. Magic equipment is expensive, especially the staff used by spellcasters. An ordinary apprentice staff can be sold for hundreds of gold coins. The lightning staff that Long En ate is suitable for high-level mages. For some high-level spellcasters who specialize in lightning spells, such a high-level staff with matching attributes can be sold at a sky-high price. The magic equipment that Long En ate during the pursuit this time is worth nearly 500,000 gold coins. Although the incident was caused by Galaxus, Long En knew that, unless he sold this thing, he would not be able to pay it back, even if he went bankrupt. He could only hold the grudge against the hill giant shaman. After a short rest, Long En's physical strength and elemental energy were recovering rapidly. After confirming that he was completely out of danger, Long En paid attention to Galaxus's screams of fear. It can't be extinguished. It can't be extinguished no matter what. Long En frowned and watched Galaxus rolling on the ground, spewing frost dragon breath on himself, but he could not reduce the black fire at all. Is there no way to deal with this thing in the dragon heritage? Long En frowned and asked. Although his body did not feel any burning sensation, he could feel his vitality draining away. Galaxus shook his head with a sad face. No, there is no record of this thing in the dragon heritage. Long En was a little surprised by this, but not too surprised. The dragon heritage is not omnipotent. Considering that the newly born young dragons can bear it, and will not be crushed by the vast amount of inherited knowledge, and become demented dragon beasts, the dragon heritage cannot cram all the knowledge into it. Every once in a while, the strong men of each true dragon race need to modify and delete the useless or outdated knowledge. Perhaps the hill giant shaman used some very old and rare spells, so old and rare that they have long been removed from the dragon heritage. Or perhaps this is a spell created by the hill giant shaman, and no true dragon has seen it, and recorded it in the dragon heritage. Long En gathered the lightning element on the dragon, claw stained with black fire. The black fire was crushed by the rich elemental energy, but it rekindled after the elemental energy dissipated. Long ordered Grangasus to tear off a piece of skin with black fire attached. After it was separated from the body, the black fire on the scales and skin immediately extinguished, but it reignited at the wound, where the skin was torn. This spell is really disgusting, Long said with a breath of anger in his heart. Compared to being stuck by this psoriasis spell that can't be removed no matter what, Long would rather be hit by a few Yangan explosions. Unable to think of a solution, he could only seek off-site assistance. Among the powerful creatures that Long knew at present, the only one who could help him was Kirilia's father, the pure Silver Isle Utheronis. Long had always been suspicious of being chosen as a favored by the Platinum Dragon God for no reason. Although the Platinum Dragon God Bahamut was known for his justice and kindness, Long believed that he must have chosen him for a purpose. Without knowing the purpose of the Platinum Dragon God, Long did not want to get involved with him and his favored, and solved the problems that he could solve by himself. However, in this situation, he could only seek help from the god's favored. Long used the teleportation to inform Kirilia of what happened here, and asked her to ask her father if he could help. The magic aura of the teleportation flew to the south at a very fast speed, and Long sat there waiting. He was only contaminated by a little black fire, and the life force that was devoured was also insignificant, so he was not as impatient as Galaxis, who was covered in black fire. According to his experience of using the teleportation to communicate with Corellia after waking up, it would take about half an hour to transmit the communication across half the continent to the other party. Now, there was a sea between them, plus the entire continent of Onia. After waiting for 3 hours, Long first received a reply from Corellia, in which Corellia asked about Long's situation, and said that she would contact her father immediately. Just from the voice transmitted by the teleportation, Long heard a lot of anxiety and worry, which was not consistent with Corellia's usual elegance and calmness. You care about your friend so much, you are worthy of being a kind silver dragon. Corellia is really a good dragon. Long sighed. Then, less than 10 minutes later, Long received Corellia's second reply. I have contacted my father. He expressed regret for your experience. According to your description and your current location, my father suggested that you go to the land of eternal winter in the north of Runia immediately. He has a friend who lives at the source of the Neverwinter River in the land of eternal winter. He can provide you with help, but it is best not to mention his name in front of his friend. With the solution, Long felt relieved. However, Corellia's voice and the communication spell in his mind had not stopped. Is your body really okay? The other party is a legendary spellcaster and may release some powerful spells that are difficult to detect, such as soul level and curse spells. You'd better check your body a few more times. I hope my father's friend can solve your problem. I wish you peace. Even with Long slowness, he also noticed something wrong. Corellia's tone seemed to be a little too concerned, which made him feel a little uncomfortable. Hiss, could this little silver dragon girl be in love with me? Long was troubled for a while, and finally decided to let nature take its course. According to the aesthetics of real dragons, Corellia can be regarded as an absolutely beautiful dragon, and Long is not opposed to her if they really want to form a pair. Even among the generally good-looking silver dragons, Corellia's appearance is also top-notch, but Corellia is still a teenage dragon and has not fully grown up. However, real dragons do not have any laws to protect underage dragons, nor do they stipulate that underage dragons cannot fall in love, so Long does not have to worry about being executed. Stroking his chin with his dragon claws, Long thought carefully, after all, I'm still a 4-year-old young dragon. If justice is really to be executed, the target should be Corellia, right? Chapter 114 Lisa Panna. With the guidance of the local dragon Galaxis, Long spent more than 2 days, and arrived at the source of the Neverwinter River in the land of eternal winter mentioned by Corellia. Long held Galaxis in his hand. In front of him was a snow-capped peak that towered into the clouds. The top of the snow-capped peak was a flat cross-section that seemed to have been cut off from the air. At the foot of the snow-capped peak, hot springs flowed out from the frozen ice layer, and not far away they converged into a river that was steaming white water vapor in this ice and snow world. This should be the Neverwinter River. To be able to survive in such an area for a long time, the friend of the pure silver isle Latheronis is probably also a real dragon, or at least some other legendary creature. Long released the dragon's power that represented friendliness, and flew around the snow-capped peak. He did not find any caves or other buildings for creatures to live in. Long climbed the flight altitude, rushed into the clouds and looked down, and then he found that the flat top of the snow-capped peak was a domed crater, and a huge and magnificent ice crystal palace was built in the crater. The style of this palace, why does it look so familiar? Long recalled the ice crystal palace called Silver Castle where the pure silver isle lived. The styles are similar. It seems that these two castles were built by the same person. Latheronis has a special relationship with his friend, but why can't he mention his name in front of his friend? Long pondered for a while, and decided to follow the advice of the pure silver eye and just think that he knew this place from somewhere else. He aimed the dragon's might at the ice crystal palace and released it. In order to avoid misunderstanding, the black fire-stained Galaxis also flew out of Long claws, restored its original size, and released the dragon's might at the same time. After waiting for a while, the ice crystal palace did not respond at all. Could it be that Latheronis' friend no longer lives here? Long said, he has lived in the secondary element space for more than 100 years. Maybe his friend has left. Long N took Galaxus and flew to the Ice Crystal Palace and landed in front of the palace gate. Long N was about to tell his purpose and ask if the master was still in the palace, but the frozen door suddenly opened. "Come in by yourself and close the door by the way, thank you." A gentle and intellectual female voice sounded in Long N and Galaxus's mind. Long N glanced at the corridor in the ice and snow gate that was similar to the one in the Silver Castle and immediately walked in with confidence. Galaxus, who was still wrapped in black fire, followed Long N and carefully closed the open door. Walking along the same road as in the Silver Castle, they came to the wide main hall. A virtual door more than 10 meters high opened at the top of the main hall. A real dragon with a body length of 24 meters, with translucent white scales all over its body, exuding bright positive energy, like a piece of glowing white crystal, walked out of the huge door with its head down. From Long N's perspective, this shining real dragon was very beautiful, and in line with the aesthetics of real dragons. When Long N saw the ice and snow palace on the high mountain, he guessed that this friend of the pure silver eye was indeed a rare crystal dragon. Crystal dragons are the friendliest of gem dragons. They are naturally bathed in the light of the positive energy elemental plane, so they are positive and optimistic by nature. Crystal dragons usually choose to live on the top of a mountain in the wind elemental plane or the icy land of the main material world. They will build huge palaces with ice crystals on the top of the mountain that is higher than the clouds. Crystal dragons who are good at architecture and carving will spend their entire lives carving and polishing their palaces to make their palaces look more shiny and transparent. An alien blue dragon, the crystal dragon, who was thinking with his head down, raised his head and looked at the two unusual visitors in surprise and, "Sorry for being so presumptuous, what kind of dragon is this?" A real dragon with black flames full of the negative breath of death. It was the first time she had seen such a strange dragon. Although the negative breath emitted by the other party made her feel disgusted, her good upbringing still allowed her to maintain the etiquette of hospitality. Seeing that the crystal dragon did not become hostile because he was a 5-colored dragon, Long N did not need to show the official good dragon certification of the platinum dragon god, and immediately nodded slightly to show respect. "Respected crystal dragon, my name is Long N, and this is my dragon nest guardian, a white dragon named Galaxus." "White dragon?" The crystal dragon looked at Galaxus in surprise, then retracted his rude gaze and said, "Sorry, I'm a little tired from the continuous stargazing and magic experiments, and forgot to introduce myself. You can call me Lisa Panna." Long N hadn't spoken yet, and Galaxus exclaimed, "Lisa Panna? Invisible thief Lisa Panna?" Lisa Panna's scaly face showed a trace of embarrassment and anger. It was obvious that the nickname Galaxus called out was not a good thing. Taking a deep breath, Lisa Panna calmed herself down and maintained a decent smile, but the smile was a little stiff. "I think you should be talking about me, but I don't like this name very much. Sorry." Galaxus also lowered his head awkwardly and shrank his neck. "Do you recognize me?" Lisa Panna looked at the white dragon burning with black flames. "I know all the white dragons around here, but it seems that there is no one named Galaxus." Galaxus said weakly, "My mother knows you. You stole her eggs and hatched them for a while, and I was one of those dragon eggs." Lisa Panna. Just hearing Galaxus say it, Long N began to feel embarrassed for Lisa Panna. Long N knew that some crystal dragons like to steal white dragon eggs and then train the hatched white dragons into honest and kind white dragons, but he didn't expect that Galaxus would be stolen by the crystal dragon in front of him. But it was obvious that Lisa Panna did not succeed in the end. "Haha. It turns out that you knew each other more than 100 years ago. That's really a coincidence. Now things will be much easier." Long N deliberately laughed and broke the awkward silence, which made Lisa Panna and Galaxus feel relieved. "Please tell me, Long N, why did you come to visit?" Lisa Panna said. Long N briefly recounted how they discovered the hill giant tribe and were hunted by the legendary hill giant shaman. "Ms. Lisa Panna, can you help us get rid of this strange spell?" Lisa Panna looked at the handsome alien blue dragon in front of her again. She didn't expect Long N to escape from a powerful legendary hill giant shaman. Given the hostility between hill giants and real dragons, she could imagine how hard the hill giant shaman tried to kill Long N and Galaxus during the hunt, but they still escaped. A handsome and powerful alien blue dragon. Lisa Panna smiled and said, I can help remove the spell from you, but you must agree to a few of my requests afterwards. Chapter 115 Filial Piety. What do you need us to do, Ms. Lisa Panna? Long N asked Lisa Panna about her conditions. After all, the phrase several requirements was too general and vague, and it was easy to be cheated. Well, how about 3 requirements? Lisa Panna said, the first requirement is to find me 10 spells that I have never seen before. It doesn't count if they are similar to the spells I know. I swear in the name of Sadio that I will follow the principles of integrity, honesty, and trust within us to judge whether the spells you give meet my requirements. Red Jade Dragon King and Lord of Gem Dragons Sadio is a recognized role model for all gem dragons. Most gem dragons believe in this dragon god to some extent. Lisa Panna's oath in his name is enough to reassure Long N. The second requirement. The transparent horn on Lisa Panna's neck swayed back and forth, and the crystal dragon tail dragged left and right on the ground. She said a little embarrassedly, the second requirement is that you have to help me steal a white dragon egg. Long N's head was black. This crystal dragon couldn't steal the egg by itself, but it wanted them to help steal it. It was really a thief. But in order to solve the trouble, Long N decided to agree to Lisa Panna's request. Anyway, the 5 colored dragons are not creatures that value feelings. Except for the blue dragons, who live in clans. Family affection is as ridiculous as the kindness of the devil to other 5 colored dragons. Those white dragons whose dragon eggs were stolen were more angry about their own things being stolen, and their strong self-esteem was at work, so they came to the door to take back their eggs. So there is no psychological burden to steal white dragon eggs. But I have a question, ma'am. Why don't you do it yourself? Long N asked. Lisa Panna's crystal backstab swung faster, without any sense of rhythm. Well, it's mainly because I have been caught stealing eggs too many times. The white dragons in the land of Everwinter have united to guard against me. If I show up, the situation may not be good. Well, feelings are still a habitual offender, and a habitual offender who has never succeeded once. It must be said that Lisa Panna is quite strong to force the white dragons who despise each other to unite. Long N nodded, indicating that he understood, and then said, what if there are no white dragons breeding in the near future? Madam, I still have a whole territory to manage, and I can't leave for too long. Don't worry about that. Lisa Panna said happily, a white dragon named Sizura will give birth in a few days, which is just right for you to do it. I have made sufficient preparations. I have been observing the stars every day during this period, and the results of divination show that I will have good luck recently. Then you came. This is the guidance of the stars, and you will definitely succeed this time. Long N wanted to remind Lisa Panna that, even if she didn't show up, the white dragons would probably find her first, after losing the dragon eggs. After all, she was the most suspicious in the entire land of eternal winter. But Long N still didn't say it out loud. He only needed to steal the dragon eggs back, and it was none of his business whether the dragon eggs would be taken back later. What's the last request? Lisa Panna thought for a moment and said, I haven't thought of the last request yet. I'll tell you when I think of it. After the discussion, Lisa Panna happily began to remove the black fire from Long N and Galaxus. After studying the black fire on Long N's hand for a while, Lisa Panna said in surprise, there is actually a trace of divine magic in it. Divine magic? Long N frowned and said, can the god that the hill giants believe in grant this kind of divine magic? Does he have the authority in these areas? This black flame that exudes evil and negative death does not seem to be related to the god of hill giants. Who knows, those ugly things may have randomly believed in a few evil gods. Lisa Panna said casually without feeling strange at all, while manipulating the light element to merge into the black fire on Long N's claws. The black fire that was originally burning quietly suddenly reacted violently like hot oil with water added, and soon all the black fire on Long N's claws was dispelled cleanly. There was too much black fire on Galaxus, and it took a little effort. Done. Lisa Panna said to Long N, luckily you came early. According to the speed at which this black flame devours vitality, your subordinate has already lost more than 300 years of life. If you come later, he may not live to old age. Long N shook his head and said, let's complete the first requirement of the agreement first. Madam, how can I show you the spell? It's very simple. Just imagine the spell model in your mind and show it to me. After Lisa Panna finished speaking, Long N felt a strange spiritual energy connecting him and Lisa Panna. This should be the psychic spell mastered by the crystal dragon. After observing it curiously for a few times, Long N selected some of the spells recorded in the books of the Lionheart family that he got from Ryan and tried to recall and imagine the spell models of those spells directly in his mind, and then passed the spell models to Lisa Panna through her psychic spells under her guidance. Among the spells selected by Long N, only one low-level spell satisfied Lisa Panna, and the rest were either known or similar spells that he had seen. After emptying all the spells in his mind and adding the spells that Long N had improved, he finally came up with 8 spells that Lisa Panna had never seen before. Lisa Panna swore in the name of Sadio that she would never lie to him. God knows why this crystal dragon, who is only a few hundred years old, has studied spells so deeply. Long N was having a headache thinking about it and suddenly said, "Madam, can it produce the effect of spells without being a spell?" Lisa Panna became interested and said with shining eyes, "Of course, but I have to see it first before I can make a decision." Long N immediately made a hand crank generator in his mind and gave it to Lisa Panna. Lisa Panna was skeptical. Can these things really summon lightning element? No mental power is required, just keep shaking it. You can try it. Long N smiled. Lisa Panna immediately opened the portal and returned to her laboratory and made a simple hand crank generator with copper wire and some metal materials. Long N waited for a moment in the main hall and the illusory door opened again. Lisa Panna stuck her neck out of the door, excited and shocked. "It really works. How did you do it?" Long N raised the corner of his mouth. "Madam, can this be considered a spell you haven't seen before?" "It counts as 2. Lisa Panna's eyes burned with a frenzy that made Long N feel a little flustered. She asked Long N anxiously, unable to maintain even the most basic manners. "Tell me how you did it." Lisa Panna's appearance made Long N feel a little uneasy. This kind of emotional change was not normal. Long N felt that Lisa Panna had some mental illness. After telling Lisa Panna some basic knowledge about electromagnetic induction, Long N quickly took the opportunity to slip out of the Ice Crystal Palace and prepared to go to complete Lisa Panna's second request, stealing eggs. 2 real dragons, one blue and one white, flew into the sky. Long N glanced at Galaxus, who had a strange look on his face. "What's wrong with you? Why have you been looking like this since just now?" Galaxus was silent for a while and said in a complicated tone, "The white dragon Zizala who is about to give birth is my mother." Long N, you are filial now. Chapter 116 Frost Giant. In the howling snow, 2 huge figures, one blue and one white, flapped their broad wings and landed on a raised snow hill. "If we go any further, we will be discovered by my mother's family." Grangusus stretched his neck and looked at the high mountains in the distance. Her dragon nest is on the hillside of the highest mountain in front. The wind and snow in the land of eternal winter are still there. The environment here has not changed much since Grangusus was expelled. He still remembers the road here. After returning here again after nearly 100 years, Grangusus's state of mind is completely different. The panic and anxiety when he was expelled, the vision and ambition for the future are gone. Now Grangusus just wants to steal the fucking eggs. It was a bit unexpected for Grangusus to get out of the embarrassment of stealing his own brother/sister so quickly. But think about it, the 5-colored dragon will not regard the raising of parents as their love for themselves. This is just the obligation of the couple who gave birth to dragon eggs as clearly stipulated in the dragon heritage. The 5-colored dragon cubs being raised will not have any attachment or gratitude to their parents, and may even covet their parents' territories, families, and treasures. If the older parents were not usually stronger, it would not be uncommon to see a loving father/mother and filial son among the 5-colored dragons. According to Galaxus, his mother likes to live alone. Even if she gets pregnant, after having sex with another white dragon, she will choose to give birth, hatch, and raise the cubs alone. When Galaxus was still a young dragon, his mother was already a 17-meter-long adult white dragon. 100 years later, his mother should have entered her prime and reached a super large body length. But Galaxus believes that, even if his mother is given another 100 years, she may not be able to defeat Longen, the abnormal alien blue dragon, especially when she is weak after giving birth. Those followers would not be that strong if they would surrender to a white dragon over 200 years old. Longen released the illusion ability of Mirage to cover himself, and Galaxus restrained his breath and walked directly into the territory of the white dragon. No, where are those followers? After walking for a while, Galaxus looked around in confusion, but did not find a single follower of his mother. The address given by Lasapana was also here, so they were not in the wrong place. A cold wind with snowflakes blew, and Longen squinted his eyes. There is a smell of blood. After Longen finished speaking, Galaxus also carefully caught the smell in the cold wind, and his face changed. With such a strong smell of blood, something must have happened nearby. Longen made a quick decision, and flapped his wings and flew high, flying towards the direction where the smell of blood came from, and Galaxus hurriedly followed. Are the dragon trapping chains not ready yet? Hurry up, idiot. A 10-meter tall giant with a frosty white complexion, dark blue hair and pupils, wearing a rough chainmail, an iron helmet decorated with feathers, and a cruel look, stood on a hillside holding an iron axe, commanding a giant that looked similar to him. In the depression in front of it, a 20-meter long white dragon with wounds all over its body was lying on the ground. Its wings were fixed to the ground by several iron spears as thick as bowls, and its mouth was also blocked by a thick iron mouth cover. These iron products were mixed with special minerals that can suppress and dispel elemental energy and mental power when they were forged. The 20-meter tall white dragon could not break free of these restraints with just physical strength. The eyes of the white dragon Caesura were full of anger and fear hidden under anger. She struggled hard, but could not stand up. She could only roar in anger, because her mouth could not open. Looking at the miserable state of the white dragon, the 10-meter tall frost giant smiled ferociously, and walked towards the white dragon with an axe. In order to capture this pregnant white dragon, the frost giants deliberately waited until it was about to give birth, when the white dragon was at its weakest. They wanted the dragon eggs of this white dragon. The newly hatched dragons were the easiest to tame. In a few decades, their tribe would have 3 or 4 tamed white dragons. The giants were very satisfied with this harvest. However, breaking a wing would not affect the laying of eggs. The giants did not mind letting this dragon, which kept barking, suffer a little. Seeing the tall giant getting closer and closer, the white dragon Caesura struggled more violently, trying to spit out breath, but was blocked by the iron mouth. Caesura's anger was gradually replaced by fear, but he still stared at the approaching giant with a ferocious look. Just as the giant stepped on Caesura's main wing bone with a grin, and raised the giant axe in his hand high, a dragon's might swept across the entire mountain pass, causing the giant to look up at the sky in shock and anger. Caesura's eyes showed ecstasy and excitement. Although this dragon might was very unfamiliar, and not the white dragons she knew, no matter who came, they would inevitably fight with the frost giants, the common enemy of these true dragons. Perhaps she could take this opportunity to escape. The whistling wind came from the mountain pass. A 19-meter long real dragon with a body like a blue gem fell from the sky with wind and snow. Its strong and powerful wing membrane fluttered in the wind. Caesura looked up at the sky, feeling the strong pressure of the strange blue real dragon, and immediately released a dragon might signal to the other party to show weakness and ask for help. Although she didn't know why this blue dragon, or it could be a sapphire dragon, appeared in the land of eternal winter, it was obviously more powerful than the local white dragon, and it was the powerful life-saving straw she urgently needed. Longen's eyes swept over the huge humanoid creatures in front of him, and he deliberately said in giant language with disdain, "A group of weak frost giants?" Sure enough, Longen's words immediately made the frost giants below angry. They have captured a 20-meter long white dragon, and this smaller dragon is so arrogant. Longen looked at the guy who was standing on the wings of the white dragon, who was 10 meters tall, and should be the leader of the frost giants, staring at him with a gloomy face, and said coldly, "Your head is very suitable to hang on my wall." Longen narrowed his eyes, snapped his dragon claws, and several thunders exploded, instantly splitting several adult frost giants into carbon color. Longen's provocative behavior ignited the raging anger of the frost giant leader, and quickly commanded his tribesmen to start operating various large weapons. They came here to hunt dragons this time, and they were very well prepared. It wanted to make this hateful blue dragon regret appearing in front of it. The heavy dragon hunting crossbow was quickly strung up, and the tight crossbow string creaked. The blue dragon hovering in the sky did not intend to dodge at all. Sizura anxiously converted dragon power into a warning to remind Longen that this blue dragon from outside probably had never encountered a frost giant and didn't know that their dragon hunting crossbows had the effect of breaking magic. But to her surprise, the blue dragon not only didn't dodge, but even a spell didn't work. She couldn't see any spells. Sizura sighed in despair in her heart. Finally, a reinforcement came, but it turned out to be a fool. After 2 hours of reading, I only got 76 points. Are you all doing 520? I'm the only one who's struggling to write graduation projects. Chapter 117 Strong Magnetic Field. More than 10 dragon hunting crossbows aimed at Longen in the sky at a very fast speed. These frost giants have rich experience in dealing with real dragons and are proficient in all kinds of weapons to deal with real dragons. Without any orders, all the frost giants operating the dragon hunting crossbows knew that now was the best time. In an instant, all the dragon hunting crossbows were activated, and more than 10 iron crossbows as thick as bowls flew towards Longen. The eyes of the frost giant leader flashed with disdain and cruelty. Does this stupid blue dragon want to resist the dragon hunting crossbow with its flesh? At such a close distance, the dragon hunting crossbow can exert its maximum power. As long as the blue real dragon does not dodge in advance, no matter what spells it has prepared, it will be pierced by the magic breaking crossbow arrows. The frost giant leader has seen this stupid blue real dragon being shot down by the dragon hunting crossbow and then cut into pieces by it. But at the moment, when the dragon hunting crossbow flew towards Longen, an invisible force field spread out. In the eyes of the frost giants and the white dragon Sizura, the dragon hunting crossbows deflected one after another and took the initiative to bypass the blue real dragon in the air. The crossbow arrows that bypassed the blue dragon slowed down in the force field and then turned around and aimed at the frost giant on the ground. In the deep frown and puzzled eyes of the frost giant leader, Longen grinned, showing his fangs, and said with a smile, "Magnetic field shield, kit." The dragon hunting crossbow that turned around and hovered in the invisible force field suddenly produced a slight distortion around it. Under the effect of this distorted force field, the dragon hunting crossbow suddenly burst out, much faster than the speed when the frost giant shot at Longen. When the frost giant leader suddenly felt a sense of crisis in his heart, he raised his giant axe and blocked the dragon hunting crossbow before it penetrated his chest. The huge kinetic energy carried by the dragon hunting crossbow shocked the frost giant leader back, and his hands holding the axe handle were numb, and blood was torn from his knuckles. Screams rang out all around, and those frost giants with weaker strength were unable to react in time, and were pierced by a dragon hunting crossbow, and nailed to the ground. Such a sudden change made the white dragon Sizura dumbfounded, thinking in his heart, how did he do it? Why is there no magic aura at all? But, recalling the invisible force field around Longen just now, Sizura made a bold guess. Is he the legendary power dragon? The frost giant leader roared, raised his axe and jumped high, and chopped Longen in midair with one axe. The frost giant leader was powerful, but far from being a legend. Longen was confident that he could easily kill him, so he deliberately flew low to lure him to attack him. Just when all the frost giant's attention was shifted to Longen, throwing flying stone ropes or spears to help their leader, a 16-meter long white dragon flew out from behind the high mountain on the side, spewing white frost, and flew towards the unattended Sizura. Garanxus. The unique dragon's might showed the identity of the visitor, and surprises came one after another, but Sizura was a little confused about the situation. While continuously spewing frost breath to block the approaching frost giants, Garanxus pulled out the dragon hunting crossbow and chains that suppressed Sizura from her body. Sizura, who regained her freedom, roared angrily, and her broken wings rolled up the wind, and she was about to rush towards the surrounding frost giants. Garanxus hurriedly stopped her. Let's run first. Don't affect Long's performance. Sizura looked at the handsome blue dragon who easily dealt with the frost giant leader, and then followed Garanxus to flap his wings and fly into the sky. Seeing that Caesura was rescued by Galanxus, Long tightened his dragon claws and punched the axe of the frost giant leader, repelling the frost giant leader. The warm-up is over. Long's body was full of electrical energy, and the strong magnetic field converted by the electric current enveloped the entire mountain pass. This was a new trick that Long realized when he was being chased by the hill giant shaman, and used the electric current magnetic field to accelerate. It was just right to test it on these guys, who were also giants. Long unclenched his dragon claws, and the frost giants wearing iron helmets in the mountain pass suddenly felt that their iron helmets were compressed by a huge force, squeezing their heads. Before the frost giants could take off their iron helmets, the huge squeezing force directly squeezed their heads and exploded. Broken skulls, red and white brains, and terrified eyeballs sprayed out from the gaps in the helmets that were squeezed like discuses. This strange scene made the frost giant leader roar madly. "Damn reptile. What did you do?" Facing the frost giant leader rushing towards him, Longen only had a thought, and the repulsive force from all directions immediately made the frost giant leader unable to move. The blue pupils of the frost giant leader were dyed dark red by the surging blood. The huge pressure made it try its best every time it took a step, but it still slowly raised the giant axe in its hand. Longen waved his dragon claws like shooing away flies, and a thrust suddenly pushed the frost giant leader back dozens of meters. Under the furious and hateful gaze of the frost giant leader, Longen raised his claws, and more than 10 dragon hunting crossbows floated in the air. Longen waved his hand, and the dragon hunting crossbow shot out instantly. This time, the frost giant leader could no longer make any resistance, and more than 10 dragon hunting crossbows accurately penetrated all parts of the frost giant leader's body. Until his death, the frost giant leader did not understand what power this blue real dragon used, and why their weapons and equipment that could suppress magic did not play any role. Some frost giants who were not wearing iron armor in the strong magnetic field were also quickly solved by Longen's magnetically controlled weapons. The white dragon Caesura had not yet reminisced with his son, but kept staring at Longen, his eyes constantly shining. 2/3 of the warriors of a frost giant tribe, nearly 80 well-equipped and well-armed frost giants, and even a 9th level frost giant leader, were easily solved by the handsome blue real dragon in front of him. His force field abilities without spell auras are very similar to the power dragon, one of the 3 legendary dragons recorded in the Dragon Legacy. Legendary dragons are much stronger than ordinary 5-color metal dragons. It is even said that the cubs of time dragons have legendary strength when they hatch. However, there are not many mentions of legendary dragons in the dragon heritage, because legendary dragons are extremely rare and will not easily appear in front of the world. Now not only did I encounter the legendary power dragon, but more importantly, this legendary dragon also saved me. Caesura looked at Longen with stars in her eyes. As for the good eldest son Galanxus, who rushed into the frost giants and helped her pull out the dragon hunting crossbow, she subconsciously ignored him. "What's his name?" Caesura suddenly looked at her son. Galanxus, who was left out for a long time, rolled his eyes and said, "Longen." As soon as the voice fell, Caesura quickly flew to Longen. Casting a spell to condense a suspended ice layer in the air beside Longen, Caesura slowly landed on the ice layer, gently raised her slender and smooth neck, gathered her broken dragon wings behind her and half unfolded them, and walked towards Longen gracefully and calmly. Longen looked at Caesura in confusion. Caesura smiled charmingly, and the tip of her tail gently touched Longen's chest and slowly slid down. "Longen, perhaps you are free tonight to accompany me, a frightened weak woman." Longen. Galanxus. Calm down. You are still pregnant. Chapter 118. Give her a nest. Crows flew over Longen's head. Even though his thoughts and ideas were no different from those of real dragons, he was still a little uncomfortable with Caesura. No matter from which angle, Caesura's actions were a bit too outrageous. Faced with Caesura's ambiguous invitation, Longen refused without thinking. "I don't have a special fetish for communicating with pregnant female dragons. Although real dragons can find beauty in most species, and can make love with them through transformation, if we ignore the cross-species point, most real dragon sexual fetishes are quite normal." Caesura's eyes flashed with a trace of shame and annoyance, and the smile on her face was a little stiff. Just when she wanted to say something, Her face suddenly changed, and she turned around and flew to her dragon nest at the fastest speed. What's wrong with her? Longen looked at Sizura's back and asked Galangsus. Galangsus thought for a while and said, maybe she's about to give birth. Longen hurriedly chased after her. They still owed Lysipana a dragon egg. Arriving outside of Sizura's dragon nest, they could indeed feel the violent elemental fluctuations in the dragon nest, and could also hear Sizura's low groaning. At this moment, Longen, an outsider, and Galangsus, a son, were too embarrassed to go in and watch the birthing process of dragons, and could only wait outside the cave silently. After waiting for 2 hours, leaving enough rest time for Sizura, who had just given birth, Galangsus entered the dragon nest at Longen's signal. Although he had saved Sizura, Longen was still a little embarrassed to ask for dragon eggs, so he simply let Galangsus speak. After all, they were mother and son, and asking for an egg might, or perhaps was not too much, right? Galangsus had already prepared himself mentally for stealing eggs, but now stealing eggs turned into asking for eggs directly, which made Galangsus embarrassed again. In any case, asking his mother for an egg was really weird. Galangsus stepped into the dragon's nest, where he grew up, and was very familiar with it. He came to the depths of the nest, and saw Sizura lying on the ground with 6 white dragon eggs rolled together with his dragon tail. White dragons usually lay 2 to 6 dragon eggs per litter, and Sizura's litter can be considered full. Galangsus felt a little more confident. It doesn't matter if he takes one of the 6 eggs. Perhaps because Galangsus appeared with Longen, Sizura was also very kind to his son, who had just grown up. What's wrong? Galangsus, my son, are you here to reminisce about the good times when you were a dragon hatchling? Or do you miss your mother? You are the first one of your brothers and sisters to come back to visit me. Galangsus rolled his eyes when he recalled the scene of Sizura raising him and his other 3 brothers and sisters. They were the offspring of Sizura's first breeding. She didn't have much experience and even slept for half a month after the dragon eggs hatched. She didn't prepare food for the dragon hatchlings in advance, and the 4 hungry dragon hatchlings relied on chewing ice cubes to avoid starvation. As for coming back to visit her, it was nonsense. If those children who had become young dragons or adult dragons returned to her territory, I'm afraid she would not hesitate to send them out of the country with dragon breath and claws. No, Zizala. I mean, mother. Galangsus was glared at by Zizala and quickly changed his words. Lon and I came here to discuss something with you. Galangsus told how he became Lon's subordinate, how he came to the north, and why he came to find her. Of course, in Galangsus's words, his image was much more glorious, such as when he first met Lon, and fought Lon evenly, and finally lost to Lon, before being convinced by Lon, and for example, he took the initiative to attack the legendary hill giant shaman many times, to buy time for him, and Lon to escape. Zizala's eyes became brighter and brighter as she listened, and her breathing, which had just calmed down after giving birth, became slightly rapid again. At the age of 4, he was already 19 meters long. Is this something that an ordinary dragon can do? Sizura became more and more certain of his guess. Longen must be a power dragon. As for why he was different from the power dragon described in the Dragon Heritage, Sizura also supplemented his mind with the reason that power dragons are too rare. The heritage may have been recorded incorrectly, or it may be that we don't know enough about power dragons and the records are not detailed enough. People only believe what they want to believe, and the same is true for real dragons. Once he began to fantasize and make up his mind, Sizura liked Longen more and more. Sapphire-like scales, 5 dragon horns like a crown, a strong and powerful body, and powerful strength. Sizura rubbed the inner thigh of his hind leg imperceptibly. So, you are Longen's slave now? Galangsus said dejectedly and angrily. It's the dragon nest guard. Sizura automatically ignored Galangsus's stubbornness. Although it was very embarrassing for his son to become the dragon nest guard of other dragons, Galangsus's master was Longen. Sizura had already thought about how to use his son's relationship to get close to Longen. In Galangsus's eyes, a suspicious smile appeared on Sizura's face, and he said, Lysipana wants my dragon eggs. Galangsus shrank his neck and nodded. Then I'll give all of this nest to her, just in time to pursue happiness. Sizura rolled up the 6 dragon eggs with his dragon tail and stuffed them into Galangsus' arms. He stood up energetically and walked out of the nest with charming steps, leaving Galangsis alone with 6 brothers and sisters in the wind. Long N was waiting for Galangsis outside the dragon's nest, but he didn't expect that Sizura would come out first. Sizura's injured parts and broken dragon wings had not yet recovered, but they were all covered by Sizura's ice spikes, making the pure white Sizura look like it was dotted with light blue gemstones. Seeing Sizura flying towards him in a reserved and elegant manner, Long N felt a headache. Lon, although I'm reluctant, I'm willing to give the egg to Lisa Panna for you. But you have to accompany me to make up for my poor and broken heart, and I'm no longer pregnant, right? Sizura's face was 3 parts sad and 4 parts admiring, with a little shyness and playfulness. Coupled with her mature and sexy charm and good-looking appearance, most real dragons might not refuse her proposal. But Lon felt weird when he thought of her as the mother of Galangsis. He didn't want to have a big son out of thin air. Just as Lon was about to speak, Sizura immediately came up to him, and the dragon's tail wrapped around Lon's claws. It's just flying around together. You are from the south, right? I'll take you to see the scenery of the land of eternal winter. Anyway, it will take a few days for Galangsis to deliver the egg. Lon sighed and treated himself as a tourist. He calmly took the claw out of Sizura's dragon tail and said calmly, just take a look. I will check for plagiarism for the first time the day after tomorrow. I'm too busy. Sorry. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 119. Make quick money. Long N and Sizura flew side by side over the sky of the land of Everwinter, passing over a large pine forest. The wolves that were hunting long-haired elk were frightened and scattered by the huge shadow. The scenery in the north is really boring. There is nothing but snow. It feels fresh at first, but after staying for a long time, you will find that the white color that stretches to the end of the vision is boring. It is now the frost month of winter. As time goes by, the days in the land of Everwinter will become shorter and shorter, and the nights will become longer and longer before the arrival of spring. When flying under the night sky of the land of Everwinter, you can always see the gorgeous aurora above the sky. This is the first time Long N has seen the aurora, but now he has changed his mentality and does not feel how shocking or fascinating it is. Long N took a look and began to think about it. The aurora is caused by the high energy charged particle flow from the sun after the charged particle flow from the solar flare or coronal ejection enters the planet's magnetic field, which excites or ionizes the molecules and atoms in the atmosphere and releases energy. The presence of the aurora proves that the sun of this world and the planet where Long N and his friends are also following the basic rules of the universe. Long N was thinking while flying, ignoring the flattering Sizura beside him, and perfunctorily dealing with the female white dragon. Sizura was secretly annoyed. She was very confident in her appearance. It can be said that no female white dragon in the entire land of Everwinter could compare to her. Whenever she went out for a walk, other white dragons would take the initiative to woo her. This was the first time Sizura felt frustrated by a male real dragon. But when she thought of Long N's identity as a powerful dragon, Sizura cheered up again. How could those white dragons who were easily seduced by her compare with legendary dragons? The more Long N rejected her, the more challenging she felt. Since her seduction had no effect, Sizura decided to change her strategy and get along slowly first, get familiar with each other, and cultivate feelings before taking Long N down. But now that they have all flown out, Sizura is not willing to go back like this. With a powerful power dragon by her side, she had to make good use of this opportunity. Some ideas that usually only existed in her fantasy seemed to have the possibility of being realized. Sizura changed the subject and asked with a smile, Lon, I wonder if you are interested in the pile of gold coins and gems? Hearing the words gold coins and gems, Long N raised his eyebrows. This was much more attractive than Sizura. Oh. Long N glanced at Sizura and said lightly, I'm afraid these gold coins and gems have already had owners. Sizura smiled awkwardly. If the conditions are right, they don't have to be. There is indeed a little obstacle to getting those treasures, but I believe that with your strength, those are nothing. Long N understood what Sizura meant. She wanted him to be a thug to rob other white dragons. It is very common for greedy 5-colored dragons to rob each other. If a weak 5-colored dragon has no one to rely on or no helpers to unite, it is easy to attract the covetousness of powerful 5-colored dragons. For the powerful 5-colored dragons, other weak real dragons are just ATMs. Robbing real dragons is much faster than other methods to make money. Long N is much stronger than ordinary real dragons, especially in the land of Everwinter, where most of the 5-colored dragons are white dragons at the bottom. In addition, Long N is coming to the land of Everwinter for the first time, and will leave soon. He does not need to worry about being guarded against in advance or retaliated later. He is the best candidate to be a robber. Long N has no objection to robbing other 5-colored dragons. After a little thought, he agreed to Zizola's proposal. Okay, but I'll take 9, and you take 1. Zizola only planned to report to Long N. She could not do it herself. If the white dragons in the land of Everwinter knew that she colluded with foreign dragons to rob local dragons, she would not be able to survive in the land of Everwinter. Therefore, the share given by Long N was very reasonable. But Sizura's greed made her want to fight for more. How about you splitting the score between 7 and me? Long N grinned. Don't be too greedy. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't even get 10% of it. Sizura cursed Long N for being ruthless in her heart, but she kept responding with a smile on her face. Tell me, who is the first target, and how strong is he? Long N asked, and Sizura immediately put aside the unhappiness in her mind. She said a name with a vengeful smile. He is also a white dragon, almost 300 years old, not much stronger than me, and his territory is. 3 hours later, hiding in the distance, and watching Long N beat a 22-meter long white dragon, Sizura was very happy. Humph. Arrogant bastard, you dared to reject my love 100 years ago. Who do you think you are? This is enough for you to suffer. Sizura can not only make money by cooperating with Long N, but also avenge her grudges. No one who has had a grudge against Sizura for nearly 200 years can escape, as her memory has always been very good. After a while, Sizura went in a different direction, and met Long, who had just finished robbing. This is yours. Long threw a bag of gems to Sizura, who couldn't wait to open the bag and count them one by one. She earned 19 gems in the first order. Long didn't feel anything. He had a kobold clan to dig gems, and he also earned hundreds of thousands of gold coins from humans. The factory and the territory also made a fortune. He just felt that the dragons in the land of eternal motion were really poor. A real dragon over 200 years old actually had such a small pile of treasures. It was really pitiful. But it was completely different for Sizura. There were no creatures in the land of eternal winter that were good at digging holes and mining. The kobolds lived in warm tropical or subtropical areas. Using other slave clans to force mining was not effective and the benefits were very low. If you want to get gems, you can basically rely on some rare open-air gem veins. There were no humans, elves or humanoids here, let alone caravans. There was no target to rob, and there was no source of gold coins. Long N did not find a few gold coins in the white dragon's lair. 19 gems were already a huge sum of money in Sizura's eyes. This was more than 1/5 of her own treasure. Sizura's mood immediately became more enthusiastic, and she flew to the next target with Long N. 2 days later, after robbing 12 white dragons, the treasures that Sizura got from Long N were more than twice her own treasures, and her desire and courage grew. Long N, why don't we rob the frost giants? I want to capture my frost giant tribe. Those disgusting blue-haired giants sent out 2/3 of their warriors last time, but you killed them all. Now there must be only some cubs and old frost giants left in the tribe. Sizura's eyes were shining, and their tribe has occupied an open-air white crystal vein. They must have mined a lot of white crystals. Chapter 120 White Hound. It was just a tribe of about 200 frost giants, especially the young and strong ones, who had lost most of their fighting power, including the strongest of the tribe, the 9th level frost giant leader, who died at Long's hands. With their strength greatly reduced, this frost giant tribe no longer had the ability to own an open-air gem vein. When other white dragons nearby noticed the weakness of this frost giant tribe, they would immediately unite to kill the remaining frost giants and divide up all the gems in the vein. Long also recalled that the frost giants killed that day were indeed decorated with some good quality white crystals, and the crystal inlaid on the helmet of the frost giant leader was of extremely high quality, pure and transparent. It's a good suggestion. Let's divide it according to the previous division, Long said. Shizura shook her head. The frost giant tribe has declined. Even without you, I can get their gems in the mineral vein. At most, I will have to share with other white dragons. You are right. Long N glanced at her, showing his fangs at the corners of his mouth and smiled. But now that I know, this mineral vein belongs to me. But you can also choose to find other dragons to cooperate with. Long N's hateful smile made Shizura angrily spit out 2 streams of extremely cold white air from her nose, and finally she could only nod in agreement, depressed. As for finding other dragons to cooperate with, if there are too few dragons, they will be too weak to beat Long N, and if there are too many dragons, they will be too strong, and will only occupy all the gems, and will not even give her 1/10. At least her interests are guaranteed by cooperating with Long N, and Long N will abide by the agreement and hand over the 1/10 of the gems that belong to her, but it is hard to say for other powerful dragons. At least there is still 10%. Shizura comforted herself. That is an open-air-rich mine. Even if there is only 10%, it is much more than the gems I have now. Shizura's expression became charming again. She threw a coquettish look at Long N and led the way in front. Long N followed behind Shizura and climbed over the snowy peaks to their destination, the Frost Giant tribe. On the way, Long N found 2 teams of frost giants who were out hunting and hiding under the snow to ambush prey. Those frost giants were easily dealt with by Long N. After a simple identification, the 2 teams of frost giants who went out hunting were all frost giants who had grown to their own limits and were relatively old. It can be seen that the frost giant tribe really did not have much combat power and could only let those aging frost giants take over. At this time, they came to the sky above the frost giant tribe, which confirmed Long N's idea. The frost giant tribe, with only about 200 people, built a tall fortress on the cliff. A row of extremely huge dragon hunting crossbows were installed on the walls of the fortress on all 4 sides. The arrival of Long N and Shizura was immediately discovered by the frost giants guarding the city wall. The sound of the horn sounded, and nearly 100 frost giants poured out from the buildings in the fortress. Except for some young and strong frost giants, most of the others were old frost giants. Even female frost giants and some frost giant cubs who were close to adulthood stood out with weapons. A nearly 8-meter tall frost giant seemed to have become the new leader of the frost giants. Under its command, all frost giants, regardless of age or weakness, rushed to the city wall fearlessly, operating the dragon hunting crossbow, or throwing spears, and flying stone ropes at Long N and Shizura. Seeing that the dragon hunting crossbow on the city wall turned around, the huge dragon hunting crossbow with a magic breaking effect, flashed with cold light, and aimed at her. Shizura panicked. She didn't expect these frost giants to have deployed such a terrifying defensive weapon in the tribe. The place where the dragon's wing was pierced by the dragon hunting crossbow was still aching. Shizura took a look at the larger and thicker heavy city defending dragon hunting crossbow on the city wall and felt fearful. It's too big. You'll die if this enters your body. Shizura flapped her wings and fled quickly. In the whistling wind, only her words remained. Come on, Long, it's up to you. Long wanted Shizura to run away because he didn't want to be a nanny for a weak white dragon in the battle. Long allowed the frost giants to aim at him carelessly, but the current had already surged in his body, and the powerful magnetic field wrapped around Long. All the frost giants who were present on the day when Shizura was rescued were killed by Long, and no one was spared. These frost giants didn't know that the dragon hunting crossbow was useless to Long, and they were still aiming at Long with fearsome cruel eyes, adjusting the angle of the dragon hunting crossbow. The old frost giants, whose potential was exhausted and could no longer grow, began to weaken. They were not as strong as the young and strong frost giants, but they had lived for more than 200 years and were experienced. They were more than 1 minute faster than the young and strong frost giants in operating the dragon hunting crossbow. The thick dragon hunting crossbow arrows flew out with unstoppable might, and the whistling sound of breaking through the air made people's hearts unconsciously tighten. But the result was destined to disappoint the frost giants. No matter how strong and fast these dragon hunting crossbow arrows were, they quickly slowed down to a standstill after approaching Long N, and then turned around and aimed at them in the stunned and frightened eyes of the frost giants. Long N thought, and the crossbow arrows shot back immediately took the lives of more than a dozen frost giants. Those frost giants immediately realized that their dragon hunting crossbow arrows were useless against this blue real dragon. The frost giants brought huge wolves with snow white hair to the city wall. The eyes of those white wolves showed cunning wisdom. After hesitating for a moment, they spewed frost cold air similar to that of white dragons at Long N at the urging of the frost giants, but the power was much weaker. Winter Wolf. Long N glanced at those powerful magical beasts in the eyes of ordinary creatures and didn't take them seriously. Long N was flying in the air more than 200 meters away from them. Their cold air attacks had already lost their power at such a distance. In front of Long N's elemental resistance, which was a few points stronger than that of true dragons of the same age, they were just a light breeze. After testing and confirming that there were no spellcasters in this frost giant tribe, Long N accelerated and rushed to the fortress of the frost giants. He released the improved fireball spell, and the rotating white balls were thrown by Long N. When they landed on the frost giants or the fortress, they immediately exploded violently. The pure explosive impact transformed from the concentrated fire element injured the frost giants and winter wolves, and killed them immediately. They were completely unable to resist. Long N, who turned into a bomber, used the improved fireball spell to clean the ground, and then turned around to kill the frost giants and winter wolves who survived the bombing. Long N was about to find the frost giant cubs and enslave them to mine gem veins for himself when he heard Sizura's cry for help. Long N turned his head and saw Sizura flying towards him. 3 white dragons ranging from 15 to 17 meters in length were chasing after her, madly releasing breath and spells. Long N frowned deeply. Sizura had lived in this area for 200 years. She knew all the white dragons around. Even if they were not on good terms, they would not be so hostile, right? Judging from the way they attacked, they were obviously going to kill Sizura. What's going on? Long N asked. Sizura, who flew past Long N, cursed angrily. It's the White Hound. Chapter 121. Frost Barbarians capture White Hound. Thunder Emperor kills people on a snowy night. Sizura was like other white dragons. He was arrogant and timid when facing a powerful guy like Long N. He was the only one who was rarely as angry as a red dragon. Therefore, Long N was surprised by Sizura's anger and hatred. Long N frowned. White Hound? The 3 white dragons were brought to Long N by Sizura. Long N noticed that the 3 white dragons had holes drilled in the corners of their mouths and the main wing bones close to their torsos. Metal rings were stuffed in them to prevent the holes from healing. They were obviously used to pass through some kind of rope. Their scales were also engraved with rough graffiti or insulting words written in giant language. Scaly dog, shit-eating beast, castrated, large goblin. Long N took a deep breath, and nameless anger surged in his heart. He understood the meaning of White Hound. These 3 were white dragons enslaved and domesticated by the frost giants. True dragons are extremely proud. Normally, a true dragon can never be enslaved by other creatures. Dragon riders are nonsense and exist only in human imagination. Even if there are dragon riders, they are at most earth dragon riders or flying dragon riders, and they can never be true dragon riders. In history, the few dragon riders who have made contracts with true dragons can only be metal dragons that are friendly to intelligent creatures. In the eyes of those powerful metal dragons, the humans or elves who have made contracts with them are more like pets placed on them. In battle, these pets will shout a few times to make them happy, and they are also happy to show off their military power in front of pets. And these pets will also produce gold coins. Most of them are great nobles with territories. Even if they are not, they will be after becoming dragon riders. In their spare time, the pets have to polish their scales and clean up dragon fesses. In this case, it is better to say that they are servants loved by dragons than dragon riders. As for the 5-colored dragons, a human once wrote a book called The Legend of the Red Dragon Knight. With its novel and exciting plot and the setting of taming real dragons, it greatly satisfied human vanity, and the author of this book became very popular. But when the book was accidentally obtained by a red dragon, the angry red dragon turned several cities, where this night novel was popular, into ashes. The author of this night novel was hung in the crater of a volcano by the red dragon, skinned and cramped, and then cured with magic. He was tortured repeatedly for a full 20 years before he died. The white dragon enslaved by the frost giants is an exception. The war between the real dragon and the giants has ended for tens of thousands of years. The kind and neutral giants who love peace and do not want to start a war have even signed a truce agreement with the real dragon. But the warlike, cruel, and bloodthirsty frost giants do not recognize this agreement. The white dragon, who also lives in the extremely cold land, has become the target of the frost giants' military action, as if continuing the war that has long ended. In the conflict between the frost giants and the white dragons, there are always some white dragons that have just laid eggs, or are still raising cubs, that are killed by the frost giants, just as the white dragons did to the frost giants and the frost giant cubs. The captured white dragon eggs will be hatched by the frost giants, and the young dragons will suffer various tortures until they surrender, and bow their heads to the frost giants, and are branded by the frost giants, and equipped with rights. The holes in the corners of the mouths and wings of the 3 white dragons in front of him are used to install dragon saddles and reins. Flying close to Long N, the 3 white dragons with ferocious eyes but dilated pupils, which are obviously not normal, spit out frost breath at Long N. Long N did not dodge, and rushed forward against the 3 breaths. The cold air washed over Long N, but was blocked by the high heat released by the scales, that were overloaded with electrical energy, and could not penetrate Long N's body at all. The electric current and magnetic field pushed Long N to forget the whistling wind and slapped a white dragon's wing with one claw. The huge white body of the white dragon fell down, while the other 2 white dragons attacked Long N from both sides without fear. Long N's tail broke the sound barrier and hit the head of a white dragon, causing the scales on the side of the white dragon's face to burst, and blood flowed from its visor, eye sockets and mouth. Grabbing the neck of the other white dragon, Long N pinched its mouth tightly, suppressed the dragon breath rising from its mouth, and used it as a pendulum to hit the white dragon, that was stunned by Long N's tail. Smashing the stunned white dragon down, Long N used the force of the rotation to smash the white dragon in his hand to the ground. 3 dull sounds of heavy objects falling to the ground sounded one after another. The 3 white dragons chasing Sizura were quickly dealt with by Long N, so fast that Sizura didn't react and flew another 200 or 300 meters before stopping. Long N looked gloomy at the 2 white dots flying in the sky. They were 2 14-meter long white dragons equipped with dragon saddles, riding on frost giants. After flying for a few seconds, the other party seemed to have discovered the 3 white dragons shot down by Long N on the ground, and immediately pulled the reins to turn the dragon's head. But Long N did not intend to let them go. A stream of blue light quickly caught up with the frost giants riding on white dragons, and the powerful magnetic force squeezed their armor, squeezing out the fragments of their internal organs mixed with blood from various holes. The remaining 2 young white dragons were not yet adults, and Long N slapped them in the face, and made them dizzy, and took them back to the other 3 white dragons that were shot down. Long N found the magic breaking iron chain from the frost giant's fortress, and used the magnetic force to manipulate the iron chain, to tie up the 5 white dragons tightly. Keep an eye on them, Long N said to Sizura. Sizura was infected by the seriousness and calmness on Long N's face, and the anger in his heart also disappeared a lot, and he nodded to Long N. Long N flew into the frost giant fortress, spreading the magnetic field, feeling the changes in the magnetic field, and looking for living things in the fortress. After sensing for a few seconds, Long N used magic to blast open the partition wall between the 2 buildings, and with one claw, opened the secret door of the underground passage in the partition wall, that could block spells and mental detection. Several spears with tricky angles flew out of the tunnel, but stopped in the magnetic field in front of Long N. Long N's pupils shrank into dangerous and cold vertical lines. He stared at the frost giants in the tunnel expressionlessly and said slowly, "Come out, I don't want to say it again." The iron spears fused with the magic suppressing, or twisted and deformed as Long N spoke, and were squeezed into iron balls. The old frost giants in the tunnel seemed to want to resist. Several iron balls were shot out, crushing the heads of several old frost giants into pieces. Under Long N's cold gaze, several old frost giants walked out of the tunnel with more than 40 tearful and sobbing frost giant cubs. looking at the eyes that were filled with bloodshot due to crying and anger, staring at him with hatred. Longen's mouth flashed with thunder, and nearly 10 frost giant cubs were chopped into steaming half-cooked meat in front of the frost giant's angry eyes. My time is precious, and my patience is very limited. These are the prices you have to pay for your stupidity. A young frost giant rushed towards Longen with red eyes, as if he wanted to bite off a piece of meat from Longen without a weapon. Boom. Several thunders exploded, and the young frost giant who rushed towards Longen turned into a pile of black corpses, and several other frost giant cubs suffered the same fate as him. Longen's tone did not change much, and his eyes swept through the pairs of eyes that were filled with hatred and fear. Because of its recklessness, several other people also lost their lives. Longen looked around, and no frost giant cub dared to look him in the eye. So now, who can tell me the origin of this emblem? Longen threw out a deformed helmet from his storage ring, but he could still see an axe emblem with iron chains wrapped around it. He had just taken it off the head of the frost giant riding the white dragon. No one wants to say, very good. In the dead silence, or thunder exploded every minute, taking the life of a frost giant. Fear spread in the oppression and thunder. After more than 10 minutes, a young frost giant finally collapsed and roared, enough, enough. I know. Longen moved his mind and manipulated the scattered dragon hunting crossbows to penetrate an old frost giant who wanted to stop him. He looked at the young frost giant who couldn't suppress his fear. That's the emblem of the Frost Axe clan in the northwest. They are here to annex us and rob our mineral veins. The Frost Axe clan has nearly 2,000 members and 14 white hounds. Their leader is a legendary frost giant. Enough, you devil. The young frost giant roared to vent his anger and breathed in the air in big gulps. Longen glanced at it, showing his ferocious fangs, and said, very good, but as a price for your offense to me. Boom. Several thunderbolts killed the remaining few old frost giants. Let them atone for your sins. In the terrified eyes of more than 20 surviving frost giant cubs, Longen spread his wings and flew out of the fortress. Zizala, keep an eye on those frost giant cubs, don't kill them, I still need slaves for my mine. Longen could have directly asked Zizala about the Frost Axe clan, but he insisted on using this method to force the frost giants to surrender, so that they could become obedient slaves. Another reason was that those white hounds made Longen a little angry, and he needed to find something to vent his anger. Zizala looked at Longen's back flying away to the northwest, and couldn't help but ask loudly, hey, where are you going? It's dangerous over there. Longen didn't even turn his head. Go kill some people. I have to stay up late to work on my graduation project at night. I'm too sleepy and tired. The title of the whole work allows me to relax. Chapter 120 to taking a day off. Tomorrow I will do the second check for plagiarism, and will start calculating the grade. The repetition rate of the paper is still 52%. I'm a little impatient, and can't type well. I can only take a day off. Sorry, I will try to make up after the defense. Chapter 123, Legendary Frost Giant. Thunder flashed over the land of eternal winter, dispersing the dark green aurora and briefly illuminating the places it passed. Pointing straight at the night sky, the snowy peaks like white spear tips passed under Longen's wings, and rushed towards the horizon behind him. The snowy peaks in the distance kept getting closer, and 2 sentry towers built of solid ice came into Longen's sight. On the ice walls of the sentry towers, there were wild and rough axes wrapped with iron chains. On the top of one of the sentry towers, there was a white dragon head made of lime nitrate, with grey scales, dry muscles, and hollow eye sockets, revealing a strange and hideous look. The frost giants in the sentry tower discovered the blue real dragon flying from a distance, and immediately blew a huge horn to convey the news of the enemy's attack to the tribe. Inside the sentry tower, several frost giants turned the capstan and aimed at Longen with dragon hunting crossbows from the windows of the sentry tower. Before the dragon hunting crossbows could be fired, several iron balls that were so fast that they could not react shot their heads. A long and desolate horn sounded, and the frost giants of the Frost Axe clan were ready for the invasion, but Longen didn't care. He had no intention of sneaking in secret. He was here to overturn the table this time, and he wanted to be direct, simple, and rough. He casually threw 2 modified fireballs, destroying the 2 watchtowers along with the surviving frost giants in them. Beyond the mountain, where the watchtowers were located, a large city built of black boulders and solid ice appeared in front of Longen. 9 frost giants riding white dragons took off into the air, and the white dragons surrounded Longen under the control of the frost giants. Except for the 5 white dragons that were previously crippled and knocked unconscious by Longen, the remaining white dragons tamed by the Frost Axe clan were all here. 3 of the 9 white dragons were young dragons that were not yet adults, about 12 meters long. 5 were close to adulthood, or had just reached adulthood, about 16 meters long. The last one was nearly 23 meters long, a circle larger than Longen, and was a mature white dragon that had been enslaved for at least 300 years. The lifespan of a frost giant is generally about 250 years. This white dragon had been enslaved for longer than the lifespan of a frost giant. Those frost giants who accidentally captured it had already aged and died, but it was still being enslaved, whipped, and tortured by the descendants of those frost giants. Longen's icy eyes swept over the frost giants riding the white dragons. Before they charged at him, his whole body was rioting with electric snakes, and the invisible magnetic field enveloped this area. Pop. The heads of several frost giants exploded like crispy watermelons under the pressure of the iron helmets, and they died instantly, before fighting Longen. In the blink of an eye, only 2 of the 9 frost giants riding white dragons were left. Longen looked at the 2 frost giants wrapped in fur full of elemental energy. They were 2 spellcasters, and were not wearing any armor that could suppress magic. The 2 frost giant warlocks were shocked by the strange death of their companions. They didn't understand why the heads of several tribesmen who were wearing armor that could resist various spell attacks exploded without being touched at all. They hurriedly commanded the white dragon to spit out breath, to delay time for them to cast spells. When they encountered other white dragons before, their companions riding on white hounds could bite those damn white dragons and delay them in place, so that they could easily cast spells and hit those white dragons. But now, as soon as they met, their companions had become several headless corpses, fixed on the dragon saddles, and swaying in the wind as the white hounds flew. Several unconscious white dragons that could not cast spells, and could only spit frost dragon breath were completely unable to stop Longen. The overload of electricity made Longen's blood boil. He completely ignored the breath of several white dragons, flapped his wings, and flew out of the frost storm formed by the breath, and rushed straight towards the 2 frost giant warlocks. A frost giant warlock panicked and instantly released a chain of lightning, which was the highest level of the spells it could release instantly, but perhaps because the perpetual land had never seen a blue dragon, or perhaps because it was scared, it even forgot that lightning was the specialty of blue dragons. Several jumping arcs hit Longen's body, first being dissipated by the strong magnetic field distributed on the surface of the body, and then hitting the scales that emitted blue light due to full of electricity, and were directly absorbed by the gem-like blue scales, so that Longen could not even feel the slightest pain. Looking at the backs of the 2 frost giant warlocks commanding the white dragons to flee in panic, Longen gathered concentrated electric light between his claws. This is how electricity is used. The concentrated and compressed electric energy was instantly transformed into a powerful electromagnetic field within the small range of Long's claws. 2 iron balls that were accelerated to blurry in the magnetic field and difficult to be captured by the naked eye flew from Long's claws to the frost giant warlock on the back of the white dragon. The 2 frost giant warlocks just felt a strong sense of crisis, and their heads were shot by the iron balls that could not be seen clearly by the eagle eye. The 2 frost giant warlocks who were about to use life-saving methods softened, and their bodies were carried forward by the white dragon, spraying blood from their necks all the way. The white hounds of the Frost Axe clan and the 2 strongest spellcasters of the clan were defeated and killed so easily by this blue real dragon that was less than 20 meters long. All this happened so quickly that the frost giants in the Frost Axe clan city only reacted at this time. The spellcasters and white hounds of the white dragon that could easily hunt the white dragon before could not survive 10 breaths of the attack of the blue real dragon. Question mark? Anger and disbelief surged in their hearts at the same time. The dragon hunting crossbows that were adjusted to the angle of elevation and aimed at the sky were finally ready, and all the frost giants showed cruel and hateful smiles. Frost Axe City was built here for more than 1,000 years and still stands tall. It has repelled and killed the invading real dragons countless times, relying on nearly 200 demon-breaking dragon hunting crossbows. No real dragon can escape unscathed from the coverage of 200 demon-breaking dragon hunting crossbows. In the nearby frost giant clans and tribes, Frost Axe City has another name, Falling Dragon City. More than 20 real dragons have fallen in these crossbow arrows. 200 demon-breaking dragon hunting crossbows fired at the same time, and the thick dragon hunting crossbow arrows covered all the space around Long N. It is indeed difficult to escape with the speed of ordinary real dragons, but in Long N's eyes, the speed of these crossbow arrows is not fast. If he wants to dodge, he can easily get away with his burst speed in a short period of time. The frost giants, looking up at the sky, waited for the blue real dragon to be pierced by the crossbow arrows and blood to splash, but they saw that the blue real dragon did not dodge, but instead faced the dragon hunting crossbow arrows and came down. Dragons are so stupid. This thought just emerged in the minds of the frost giants, but was quickly extinguished. The dragon hunting crossbow arrows not only did not penetrate the blue dragon that was heading towards them, but instead slowed down obediently beside the blue dragon, then turned around and flew down with the blue dragon. Long N, wrapped in thunder and lightning, fell from the sky and was about to hit the wall of Frost Axe City, which had never been touched by a living dragon, except the White Hound in the past 1,000 years. A frost giant with a height of 12 meters jumped high and chopped Long N with an axe from a height of dozens of meters. Long N blocked the attack with his claws, but the downward momentum was abruptly curbed, leaving only the dragon hunting crossbow beside him to fall freely, taking the lives of several frost giants. Long N raised his dragon claw and squinted his eyes at the deep wound on his claw. Legend: I worked on my graduation project all night and only slept for an hour. I was too sleepy and typed very slowly. I'm updating it now. I can't how to apologize. Chapter 124. Legend is just like this. Legendary Frost Giant. Long N, while examining the enemy who jumped out to block him, manipulated the current in his body to focus on the dragon claw and use the strong magnetic force converted by the current to gather the flesh and blood on both sides of the cut wound. Under the effect of the strong magnetism, Long N, whose whole body has become a magnetic conductor, can make all the flesh and blood scales on his body adhere to his body. Even if a few pieces of flesh fell off his body, he can put the torn and cut flesh back like a spare part. Although in fact he was injured, this ability can at least make him look intact on the surface, and can also avoid affecting his mobility due to muscle rupture or limb mutilation. If Long N can maintain this state of exciting current to release a strong magnetic field, as long as his head is not directly blown apart by a single blow, he can almost ignore all physical attacks. Legendary Warrior. I'm uninjured. You can do whatever you want. This is also Long N's biggest reliance on coming alone. After knowing that the leader of the Frost Axe clan is a legendary frost giant instead of a legendary frost giant spellcaster, Long N is so unscrupulous. Frost giants are a race that worships force and is very concerned about power. The strongest person in the tribe or clan will definitely be the leader. Therefore, Long N does not need to worry about a legendary frost giant warlock or a priest of a god they believe in. Apart from legendary spellcasters, the only means of attack these frost giants can use against him are dragon hunting crossbows or other throwing weapons. These metal products are not a threat to Long N, but at least until the number of these weapons reaches the limit of the magnetic force he can control now, there is no possibility of hurting Long N. Long N just looked at it, and the legendary frost giant leader who jumped up to block Long N with an axe and was still falling was furious. He hated the look of this real dragon looking at him, which was full of contempt and disdain. He had become a legend 40 years ago, killed the previous leader to rule the Frost Axe clan, and conquered several surrounding frost giant tribes. He had never seen such a look in the eyes of other creatures, even real dragons. Since it was born, it has watched how the domesticated white hounds in the clan were insulted and tortured every day. When it grew up, it rode on the white hounds to hunt white dragons. Those weak soft egg white dragons were chased and hunted by them riding on the white hounds. After becoming a legend, it even killed 3 white dragons with its own hands. In the past 100 years, the strength of the clan has been rising, and the number of white hounds has increased. No white dragon dares to set foot around Frost Axe City. Under its leadership, the Frost Axe clan has begun to integrate all the surrounding Frost Giant tribes. When it is completed, the Frost Axe clan will have 5,000 Frost Giants, and it will become the Frost Giant Lord respected by all Frost Giants. This real dragon in front of it, which is less than 20 meters long, dares to look at it with such eyes. It must chop off the head of this blue real dragon, and then take out its eyeballs and eat them. I hope that by then, these two eyeballs that it hates will still be as arrogant as they are now, so that it will feel more happy when eating. The legendary Frost Giant leader loosened the battle axe in his hand, slowed down lightly, stepped on the battle axe at the moment of its fall, and used the force to jump high again. At the same time, he took off the dragon bone longbow and forbidden magic long arrow behind him. His light blue hair tied into several strands danced wildly in the biting cold wind. His muscles were knotted and tight under his scarred white skin. His light blue eyes were focused and cold like ice. His arms pulled the longbow made of white dragon ribs out of the full moon. The black long arrow covered with giant language inscriptions shot at Longen the moment he let go. Although he didn't know what magic the blue real dragon in front of him used to control their dragon hunting crossbow arrows, the legendary Frost Giant firmly believed that this real dragon would never be able to block his arrow. This kind of forbidden magic long arrow was specially made for it, mixed with a large amount of forbidden magic ore, and the probability of successful manufacturing was not high. In addition, the arrows had to be engraved with arrow body suppression inscriptions, which made the number of finished products even scarcer. But once the arrow is made, the effect will be extremely powerful. The effect of suppressing magic is several times stronger than that of ordinary dragon hunting crossbows or other weapons, and it can even make it difficult for the legendary white dragon to release spells. Such weapons are specially used to restrain those enemies who have strong spellcasting ability and can ignore the magic suppressing effect of the dragon hunting crossbow to a certain extent. After shooting an arrow, the legendary Frost Giant's leaping power was exhausted and fell down again. Looking at Longen, who still did not dodge, it showed a disdainful sneer at the corner of its mouth. Your pride has blinded your eyes, so you will see how you die. The magic suppressing long arrow shot through the wind and snow and flew towards Longen. Just as the legendary Frost Giant thought, the magic suppressing long arrow seemed to be blocked by some force when it approached the blue real dragon. The speed was slightly reduced, but it was still enough to shoot through the chest cavity below the heart of the blue real dragon. There is the source of the real dragon's magic power, an organ more important than the heart, the basal blood vessels. If the forbidden magic arrow approaches the base blood vessels, even a powerful legendary dragon will temporarily become a high-level beast that can only use physical strength and breath, and can no longer cast spells. Under the pressure of magnetic force, the arrow still did not stop, and Longen's eyes showed a trace of surprise, but it was just surprise. The magnetic force far exceeded that used to control the dragon hunting crossbow arrows, and compressed in the direction of the arrow. The legendary Frost Giant widened his eyes and watched the forbidden magic arrow drop in speed when it was about to shoot into the chest of the blue dragon, and then it was casually held in the claws of the blue dragon. An arrow made of ore. Longen casually glanced at the arrow that seemed to be made of glass but was harder than steel. It's interesting, but it's a pity that there is still metal in this ore. The dragon claws clenched and directly broke the hard arrow, and the glassy black fragments fell from Longen's claws. A bright blue flash burst out from Longen's body, and the speed suddenly increased, rushing towards the legendary Frost Giant like a blue beam of light from heaven. The legendary Frost Giant, who had not yet landed, could no longer use the force to turn around in the air. He could only watch as a sharp dragon claw instantly broke through his chest. The solid metal chainmail and his tough ribs were like nothing under the claws, and a huge bloody hole was broken cleanly. Longen inserted a claw into the legendary Frost Giant's chest and smashed it to the ground, dispersing the strong magnetic field used to reinforce his claws. Longen's claws turned and pinched the legendary Frost Giant's heart. You are too weak. The legendary Frost Giant roared unwillingly and pulled out the dagger at his waist and stabbed Longen's neck. The legendary power burst out at a speed so fast that only the afterimage left by the arm could be seen, but it pierced Longen's scales. No matter how hard the legendary Frost Giant tried, it was difficult to make any further progress. The legendary Frost Giant asked in disbelief, "Are you really just an adult dragon?" It's suspected that this was a terrifying ancient dragon using the transformation technique to play a trick on it. Long N shook his head and didn't answer, but whispered, "Legends are just like this." With a clench of the dragon claws, the heart of the legendary frost giant was instantly shattered, and it died. "Thank you for the 10,000 points of reward from the boy killer. I kowtow to you. I also thank my friends who have always supported me. I can see your recommendation tickets and monthly tickets. Thank you very much. It should be on the shelves on June 1st. I hope everyone can continue to support it and make the first order. I kowtow." Chapter 125 Massacre. The bones, muscles, skin and even hair of the legendary warriors have gone beyond the realm of flesh and blood. Ordinary people holding ordinary swords cannot even leave wounds on the bodies of legendary warriors. The heart of the legendary frost giant is tough and strong, not more fragile than some steel, but it can only be broken in Long's claws. Long pulled his claws out of the chest of the legendary frost giant and scanned the other frost giants. The legendary leader died in the hands of this blue true dragon, but these frost giants were not afraid of the blood on Long's claws, nor were they angry about the death of their leader. Frost giants are a cruel and brutal race. They only have fighting and killing enemies in their eyes. They will not have the idea of fear, escape, or surrender unless they are forced into a desperate situation. Long killed the legendary frost giant leader, but aroused the strong fighting spirit of these frost giants. Hundreds of high-level frost giants showed bloodthirsty fierceness in their eyes, excitedly raised swords, axes, hammers and other weapons, and roared towards Long. The leader of the Frost Axe clan was already dead, killed by the blue dragon in front of him, and the head of the blue dragon became the most noble and glorious trophy. Whoever could cut off its head could step on the corpses of the former legendary frost giant leader and the powerful dragon, to become the new leader of the Frost Axe clan. Being besieged by hundreds of high-level frost giants, the 7 or 8 meter tall giants formed a tall human wall, and behind them, more frost giants took up weapons and rushed to the battlefield. Hundreds and thousands of frost giants rushed in, like 10,000 war horses with the blood of Warcraft running wildly, and the rumbling sound made the land covered with ice and snow tremble. But Long N's expression did not change at all. Looking at the dark tide of frost giants, he snorted lightly. How ignorant and fearless. The overloaded electrical energy surged in his body again, transforming into a strong magnetic field that enveloped the 500-meter diameter. Any metal products, weapons, and armor carried by the frost giants were instantly sensed by Long N. Even the bodies of the frost giants were vaguely visible in the magnetic field. Flesh and blood bodies also have magnetic force. When the frost giants were swept by the magnetic force, the strong magnetic field immediately gave Long N feedback of this weak magnetic force. However, Long N was temporarily unable to control these weak magnetic fields that did not belong to him. This was already close to the scope of strong and weak forces, which even legends could not do. Now Long N could only compress the magnetic field and temporarily strengthen his flesh and blood for attack or defense, just like he killed the legendary frost giant before. But he could not really get involved in this realm. That was almost like a god. But his current mastery of magnetism was enough to deal with these frost giants in front of him. The powerful spirit of the real dragon surged instantly. Under Long N's control, all the metals within the range of the strong magnetic field, helmets, chainmail, great swords, and great axes seemed to come alive. The iron helmets seemed to have turned into ferocious beast mouths, with canine-like spikes growing inward, biting the frost giants' skulls, and chewing their brains frantically. The chainmail made the frost giants feel like they had encountered the terrifying and violent snow python in the land of eternal winter, tightly strangling their chests. Every time the frost giants struggled to breathe, the chainmail shrank an inch, strangling the frost giants' lungs and trachea, suffocating them to death. Even the iron boots were against the frost giants. When they took a step, the iron boots tightened the frost giants' ankles and did not move at all, as if they grew on the ground, causing the frost giants who lost their center of gravity to fall to the ground. Long N stood there, concentrating on experiencing the experience of manipulating so many magnetic changes at once. But in the eyes of those frost giants, the blue real dragon hadn't moved a claw yet, and they had already fought with their armor and weapons. And they couldn't beat these living metal products. Even if the armor was torn, the sword was broken, and the giant axe was bent, what would it matter? These metal creations don't feel any pain. They will only continue to get up and fight like undead horror ghosts after being broken into pieces of iron and scrap iron. The iron pieces pierced into the skin of the frost giants, cutting the tendons of the frost giants back and forth. The bent, broken, and bladeless weapons kept hitting the frost giants who were not dead yet. The frost giants who lost their weapons and armor could only dodge or stretch out their arms to block. Longen controlled thousands of metal products in his mind to fight with the frost giants, while looking at the frost giants who were furious, but could not escape the fate of death. The various changes of metal in the magnetic force and the fluctuations of the magnetic field in the bodies of the fighting frost giants all made Longen immersed in it. Longen squinted his eyes and enjoyed the pleasure of manipulating the magnetic force. He used the magnetic force to pull a nail hammer to smash the head of a frost giant. This feels really good. There was no living frost giant within the range of the strong magnetic field. The frost giants who gathered around and wanted to kill the blue real dragon together stopped outside the range of the strong magnetic field. The frost giants tensed up their nerves and cold sweat soaked their fur linings. A frost giant looked around and the human wall lined up neatly as if there was a danger warning line in front of their feet and no one dared to move forward. As long as they continued to move forward, the weapons and armor on their bodies would come alive and kill them, but no frost giant took off their armor and threw away their weapons. Without armor and weapons, they would also die miserably at the hands of the real dragon. In the dead silence with only the whistling of the cold wind, the frost giants did not move, but Long did. On the bloody battlefield full of frost giants' broken limbs, deformed helmets, torn chainmail, broken sword blades, and twisted and deformed giant axes all floated up, as if they were worn on invisible monsters. Long took a step forward, and the floating metal also took a step forward, but the human wall formed by the frost giants suddenly retreated. Long's mouth drew a smile, and then the smile gradually widened, until it showed hideous fangs, and the smile gradually became perverted. With a flap of its wings, its huge body suddenly flew forward, and the floating armor and weapons rushed towards the human wall of the frost giants like a metal frenzy. The frost giants who were crowded together had no time to retreat. The frost giants who retreated in a hurry squeezed the frost giants behind them, and made them fall crookedly. The stumbling frost giants were crowded and trampled, and were instantly caught up by Longen in the magnetic field and lightning. After witnessing the previous battle, these frost giants had lost all their fighting spirit. The previous high-level frost giants were the strongest group of forces in the clan, and their strength was only mid-level or just reaching high-level. Hundreds of high-level frost giants didn't even touch the scales of the real dragon, let alone them. Frost giants are brave and warlike, but they are not brainless beasts. But the hasty evacuation caused a worse result. The frost giants who were crowded and retreating were caught up by the strong magnetic field without any preparation. The armor and weapons on their bodies also came alive as before, and weapons and iron pieces tore through the frost giants' line. Several frost giants that mustered up the courage to rush towards Long were directly cut open by the broken metal in the storm of metal fragments, and were cut into skeletons stained with fresh blood while screaming. These frost giants finally felt fear, fierce and cruel, and they were eager to fight, but they couldn't help but feel scared. Because this was not a battle at all, but a massacre. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.